I paid for my Miles' 50th birthday party while her children did nothing. However, she banned me at the last minute, so I canceled everything. I am a 26-year-old female. I've been married to my hubby, 29, for over 3 years. I've always known that my husband's family doesn't particularly like me. My husband has 2 younger twin sisters, 23 female, and a younger brother, 21, who do not seem to like me. This also applies to my mother-in-law. I've never figured out why they dislike me so much, but I was determined to rectify it since I wanted to have a decent relationship with my in-laws. So I decided to prepare for my mother-in-law's 50th birthday celebration this year. My husband urged me against it, stating that if his family does not appear to like me, I should just leave it alone rather than go out of my way to be pleasant and win them over. But I ignored it because I wanted to stay on good terms with them. I'm a people person, and I couldn't handle the thought of these individuals disliking me for no apparent reason. I had to set things right. So, a few days ago, I began preparing the party and even attempted to enlist my husband's siblings. But they were uninterested and informed me that I could handle everything myself if I wanted. I reserved one of my mother-in-law's favorite restaurants, where she and her late husband would frequently go on dates, and paid for all of the food and decor ahead of time. In reality, I oversaw it all myself to ensure that everything met my mother-in-law's taste and standards, as she was very picky about such things. I even invited some of her closest friends and relatives after discussing with my husband about who she wanted there. Essentially, I paid for everything and organized it all on my own, with a little help from my spouse, whereas her own children did nothing to assist and did not even contribute financially. We went to see her yesterday, the day before her birthday, against my husband's objections. When we arrived, we observed that her other children were already there, and they seemed shocked to see us but said nothing. After some small talk, I got to the point and informed her that we'd be expecting her at the restaurant in the evening tomorrow since we had something planned for her. She smiled and thanked my husband, but he informed her that it was all on me and that she should thank me. Her expression deteriorated abruptly, and I was perplexed for a moment. I informed her that I had invited all of her close friends and some of her family members, as well as selected all of her favorite foods, in an attempt to persuade her to notice my efforts. But a hateful expression appeared on her face, and she proceeded to say thanks in the most phony, sugar-coated tone before telling me that, while she appreciated my efforts, she was sorry she would not be able to come. I was astonished and asked her why. She replied that she wanted her 50th birthday to be memorable, so she planned a family-only affair. She stated that she considered her friends to be family, but she did not consider me to be family at all. So she would prefer it if I made myself unavailable the following day. My husband and I were stunned to the core, and I realized in that instant that he had been correct all along. I should never have put forth any effort because she was clearly never going to appreciate anything, ever. My husband's siblings, on the other hand, appeared to be about to bust out laughing any second, which irritated me even more. So I stood up and told her that she could go to hell, and that if she dared to show up tomorrow, I'd have security escort her away. That took the smug expressions off everyone's faces. My mother-in-law said I was frigid and cruel. I immediately laughed in her face, saying that was quite rich coming from her. After some back and forth in which she attempted to persuade me that I was incorrect, I informed her that she did not deserve anything pleasant and that my decision was definitive. She and her children appeared furious. She started crying just before I left, most likely as a last-ditch effort to make me feel horrible, but I didn't care. I was furious. I tried to cancel the reservation while driving home, but it was too late. My husband appeared to be uncomfortable with the situation, but he refused to say anything more than that I did the right thing. When we got home, he went outside for a smoke, which was great with me because he had never been particularly expressive with his family and preferred to keep out of these situations. Furthermore, I had ignored his advice, so it was good of him not to shove it in my face. Anyway, since I'd already paid for the venue and food, I decided to rescind all of the invitations. It was really last minute and annoyed a lot of the visitors, but they were largely my mother-in-law's friends, so I didn't mind. Instead, I invited some of my own pals to make it all worthwhile, as I was very angry by all that had happened. My husband also joined in, and I convinced him to bring a couple of his friends so we could party. We took rid of the decorations just in time before they arrived and had a great time. I posted all of the photos once I returned home today. My sister-in-law texted me, claiming I had spoiled her mother's birthday and that it was really selfish of me to utilize the venue for myself, especially given how much it meant to my mother-in-law. I don't feel very regretful for what I did, and I believe it was absolutely justified. I only hope I'm right. Eta for canceling my mother-in-law's scheduled birthday celebration after she informed me that I was not welcome. Update 1. I informed my husband of the message his sister had sent me and asked whether I should apologize to his family. He answered, "Absolutely not." In fact, he informed me that he'd had enough of their behavior and believed it would be best if we cut them off completely. This was a significant deal because his family relied heavily on him for money and other necessities, particularly my mother-in-law. My husband is relatively wealthy and owns his own business, so cutting him off would force her to rely on her other children. That was a problem because my husband's siblings were unemployed and changed jobs every few months. To be honest, they were all heavily reliant on him for money and other necessities, so this was a major decision. I tried to discourage him from doing so, but he was determined. I am sure there is something deeper going on here. To be honest, I've always seen that as we dated, his family grew increasingly distant from him. He had grown apart from his family by the time we married. It wasn't his fault, since I recall him telling me several times that he would bring his family over for supper while we were dating and even throughout the early days of our marriage. But they would always find an excuse to avoid it. I felt certain that I was also part of the reason. That was another element that drove me to establish a friendship with my in-laws, so that my spouse could reconnect with his family. I'm confident that there is anything my husband isn't or hasn't told me. He isn't the type of person to desert his family. Previously, he told me how important family was to him. So this unexpected decision, while reasonable in light of how my mother-in-law treated me a few days ago, is unusual and out of character for him. I'm determined to get to the bottom of this because I don't want my spouse to be miserable or resentful of me in the future. I'm just hoping he feels comfortable enough to tell me why he took such dramatic measures now. Update 2. After much pestering, my spouse finally spoke up about why he is splitting off his family after all these years. I knew his father died when he was 21, and all of his siblings were in school at the time. His mother had never worked a day in her life, so it was up to him to get to work and be the provider for the family, as the money his father had left him would not be enough to cover everything. He worked hard all day and night. Finally, when he was around 23, he found some investors for his startup, and things began to improve for him. He moved from barely scraping by to flourishing, which was excellent for him. But it made his family extremely lazy and materialistic. They were increasingly reliant on him as he earned more money. But he didn't say anything or complain because he felt obligated to do so, as his father would have expected. They also mistreated his girlfriends, believing that having other people in his life would distract him and that his primary goal should be to care for his family. This is why, when we met and it became evident that I wasn't someone they could simply mistreat and drive away, because I was so desperate to remain with my husband, they were irritated by my very presence and attempted to poison my husband against me. But by then, he'd had enough. During our relationship, there was a lot of fighting and bickering behind my back. His family pushed him to break up with me, but he was determined to marry me. They eventually distanced themselves from him in an attempt to guilt-trip him, but they continued to approach him for money. This strategy likewise failed to separate us. Several years later, we're still going strong. After the whole birthday incident, my husband told me that when his sister contacted me to guilt-trip me, his mother called him to do the same to him. She was trying to emotionally manipulate him into leaving me after I insulted her. That's why he decided he'd had enough and it was time to move on. I'm still shocked that his family put him through this, despite the fact that he was the one who supported them the entire time. I've pretty much lost all respect for them because they're just so greedy. I'm so glad I opted to continue with my husband despite his family's attempts to separate us and drive me away so they could take his money. To be honest, I don't care how much money he has since I love him for who he is, regardless of his monetary balance. Now that I know the whole story, I'm shocked he was able to put up with it all and even keep it a secret from me for so long only to spare my feelings, as I wanted to have a good relationship with my in-laws. But he knew that would never happen. I believe he is making the correct choice right now, and his family deserves to be cut off. They're extremely selfish and greedy, and they show no regard for the one man who has had their back for so long, despite all odds. Update 3. My husband finally phoned his mother and told her that he doesn't want to hear from her or his siblings unless they modify their behavior. He also told them that they would have to find their own source of money because he would not be able to support them indefinitely. As I had predicted, this action was met with outrage on their end. I could hear my mother-in-law yelling at my husband even though his phone was not on loudspeaker. They got into a really vicious quarrel. Because I was in the same room with my spouse, I heard all he said. My mother-in-law clearly attempted to blame me for this. She said that I must have influenced his decision to cut them off somehow. She also accused me of wanting to split their family up. She advised my husband to avoid being manipulated by his wife. Again, the irony of her instructing my husband not to allow himself to be influenced amused me. Naturally, my husband defended me to the best of his ability. He also told her that his siblings should get excellent jobs because they are all adults now, And it's pathetic that they still have to rely on him to care for them. She began accusing my husband of becoming obsessed with the money and power that came with holding such a high-paying career. She said that I was probably urging him to split off his family, which is why he was treating his own blood so harshly. It was textbook manipulation and emotional blackmail to keep him under her control. But now that I knew what she and her other children had been up to, I wasn't going to let it happen again. When things got too hot and I could see my husband becoming agitated and teary-eyed from frustration, I decided to step in. I informed her that my husband's mind was made up. If she and her children don't get in line soon, they will lose my husband's support forever. Now the ball was in their court. They could either behave decently and respect me and my spouse in order to continue to be in our lives. Or they may be the blood-sucking, materialistic a-holes they were and be kicked out of my husband's life completely. Having said that, I hung up and silenced all notifications on my husband's phone so he didn't have to deal with them for a bit and could relax. It's been an hour since the call ended, and we've set aside our phones to watch a movie and distract ourselves for the time being. Update 4. Because pestering my husband and destroying his day wasn't enough, my mother-in-law chose to annoy me instead. After the movie, my spouse decided to finish some pending work, while I checked my phone. My mother-in-law missed several calls and sent me numerous texts stating filthy things. They were filled with curse words from my husband's siblings. I wasn't surprised, though, because this was exactly what I anticipated them to do. I just took screenshots for later and disregarded it. I spent the next 10 minutes responding to business emails and other correspondence. But then my mother-in-law called again, and I mistakenly accepted the call. She then continued to say the most offensive things about me and my upbringing. She described me as a manipulative and greedy gold digger who was out to destroy my husband. I didn't respond to any of her charges and just waited for her to finish it. When she seemed to run out of steam, I informed her that everything she accused me of was something she was also guilty of. So, before pointing fingers, she should probably do some introspection. I also informed her that I was relieved that my husband was finally getting rid of freeloaders like her and her other children, who didn't deserve to even breathe the same air as him. Then I hung up and blocked her and my husband's siblings everywhere I could, making it impossible for them to contact me. It's really terrible that individuals will go to such lengths to avoid having to do any work for themselves. I haven't told my husband about his mother calling me yet since I don't want to stress him out any further. But if this happens again, I will absolutely inform him and ensure that they are permanently removed from our lives. They have no right to interrupt our calm in this way. I'm not sure what they'll do next, but I'm confident that my mother-in-law will not stop. Unless we decide to pursue legal action against her or anything. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, because it would be a terrible emotional experience for my spouse. But if it happens, I'm prepared to see that we see it through. They're definitely not fooling with my spouse anymore. Update 5. It's been about 2 weeks since the last update, and a lot has happened since then. After blocking my mother-in-law, my husband and I ate dinner and went to bed, hoping for some peace and quiet the next day. But the next day, my mother-in-law arrived at our house with her 3 grown children, demanding an explanation for all that had been said and done thus far. She looked upset, as did my husband's siblings. I knew this was going to be really stressful for my spouse. Despite their protests, I chose to remain in the room, claiming that I had no right to be there because this was a family matter and I am not a member of the family. I informed them that they were invading my privacy and were standing under my roof, thus they had no right to tell me whether I could stay or not. Then they started angrily abusing my husband, accusing him of being selfish and unreasonable. They even went so far as to accuse him of leaving his family in order to please his wife. My husband had remained silent and was already hot in the face. So I knew it was my cue to take over. My husband is a very sensitive man, especially when it comes to his family and loved ones, so I knew he would be unable to fight them and defend himself against their false charges and manipulation. That was how tender-hearted and caring he was. And while they were only exploiting him for his money, he honestly and deeply loved his family. So I urged him to calm down and told his family to leave since they were upsetting me. More importantly, they were causing my husband to cry. My mother-in-law began arguing with me, stating that I didn't get to push her around, especially at her son's house, and that she could remain as long as she wanted. She didn't stop talking to my husband, even though he seemed unhappy about everything. It was awful to see how little she cared about her own son's sentiments. What mattered most to her was money. So she began telling him that she had not raised him in this manner and was dismayed that he was prioritizing his wife over his own family. His brother even stated that the only role he should be fulfilling was that of a son and brother because I was a gold digger and did not deserve to have a husband like him in the first place. That irritated me, and I lost my composure. At that moment, I snapped at him and told him what I thought of all of them. They were all lazy, Good-for-nothing fools who relied exclusively on my husband's kindness and charity because they were unable to provide for themselves. They were basically the definition of gold diggers. Furthermore, not only were they continuously hovering around my husband for money, but they had the audacity to be so ungrateful and target him after everything he'd done for them. They were stunned into silence. I could tell they were struggling to fight back but had nothing to say. Taking advantage of this, I ordered them to go before I reported them to the cops for appearing up unexpectedly and refusing to leave. So they left. But my mother-in-law was still certain that she could persuade my husband to choose them over me. She said that if his father had been living today, he would be disappointed with how their eldest son treated them. I thought it was incredibly nasty and despicable to repeatedly use that card to emotionally manipulate my husband. By the time they drove away, I could tell my spouse was barely holding it together. As soon as they departed, he began sobbing uncontrollably, and I spent hours calming him down. I felt bad about the entire situation and regretted that I hadn't tried to offer my mother-in-law a birthday party in the first place. But then again, that's what opened the can of worms. And I am thankful that this occurred sooner rather than later. Anyway, after his family departed, I banned them everywhere, including his phone and social media, and made sure they couldn't contact us online. After he'd calmed down, I told him it was time to start looking into lawyers. I was confident that this would not be the last we heard from his mother and siblings. He agreed because, as much as he hated to admit it, he knew his family was willing to go to any length to acquire money from him. So we started looking for family lawyers simply to be safe. And we were absolutely right to do so. Within days of the fight, my mother-in-law sent us a legal notice. She asked that he pay them a large sum of money as reparation for taking heaps of money from them after his father's death to establish his business. It appalled me that she and her children were prepared to lie about something so important and disparage my spouse. He'd never accepted a single dollar from his father's estate, instead using money he'd earned himself. He was entirely self-made, and stating such a thing was an affront to his character. I was enraged that they dared to spread such a lie. Because my husband's company is rather large, it sparked a lot of interest, which had an impact on his business as well. That was a stupid move on their behalf. However, after over 2 weeks, we were able to verify that they were lying and that none of their assertions were real. So now they're the ones who must pay us a large sum for attempting to discredit us and threaten my husband's job. Last I heard, my mother-in-law and her children had been shunned by the rest of the family due to their nasty little stunt. All 3 of those lazy bastards are trying to find work so that they can pay the bills that my husband has been handling thus far. I'm pleased this is happening to them because they utterly and completely deserve it. We can now move on from this episode and forget about them completely. My spouse and I are very happy now, and I aim to keep it that way forever. My family tried to ruin my wedding. Am I the asshole for organizing a luxury cruise for my birthday and not inviting my parents or siblings? I, a 28-year-old male, work as a medical device development engineer for a large healthcare organization. Honestly, I never expected to find myself in this predicament. For context, I've been leading a groundbreaking initiative to create a new cardiac monitoring system that is transforming how we follow heart problems in real time. The technique we developed has the potential to save thousands of lives by detecting cardiac irregularities hours before a severe incident. Our team's work has been published in numerous leading medical journals, and we just received a renowned industry innovation award. Professionally, my life is flourishing. However, my familial situation is very different. That disparity has never been more clear than today, as I face what is perhaps the most important decision I've ever had to make about my familial relationships. I'm the middle child in a household with 3 siblings. My older brother Alex, 32 million, works as a cardiac surgeon at a famous hospital and is the perfect child. Sophia, 16F, my younger sister, is the baby of the family, and she is always showered with affection. Every year, their birthdays are huge celebrations. For Alex's last birthday, our parents leased out an entire premium restaurant, hosted over 100 guests, and spared no expense. When Sophia turned 16, they hired a live band and turned our backyard into a festival venue. I remember how they spent weeks preparing every detail, from creating custom decor to hiring a professional photographic crew. Let me paint you a picture of how I grew up. Every success I made was overshadowed by those of my siblings. I recall sitting at the dinner table on my 8th birthday, hearing my family talk about Alex's soccer game as if it were any other day. They had thrown him a massive superhero-themed party 2 weeks prior, complete with a magician, special costumes, and party favors that outperformed any item I possessed. The entire neighborhood was there, kids running around in capes and masks, and my parents were beaming with pride at their magnificent firstborn. When I eventually got up the confidence to ask if they had forgotten my birthday, My mother barely looked up from her phone and said, "Oh, sorry, honey. We've been so busy with Alex's tournament schedule and Sophia's dance performance. We will make it up to you next year." She returned to displaying everyone photos from Alex's party on her phone. I recall sitting there, staring at my untouched food and feeling invisible in my own home. They never made it up to me. Not that year or any other year. The pattern persisted throughout my childhood. When I was 13, we were enjoying a family meal when the waitress inquired about any upcoming birthdays. My mother actually chuckled and said, "Oh, just his, but we aren't doing anything major. He's not the type to require much." Everyone at the table giggled, as if it were a light-hearted joke. When I think back to that moment, the shame still burns in my chest. Later following year, they threw Sophia a half-birthday party because she was disappointed that her birthday fell during the summer while school was out. The gap wasn't limited to birthdays. Throughout my childhood, every request I made was answered with excuses, yet my siblings received whatever they want. When I was 10, Alex begged for the most recent game console. Our parents went 3 hours to another city to get it, stating, "Nothing's too much trouble for our future doctor." A few months later, I requested the local store for a scientific kit, which I planned to utilize for the school science fair. My mother disregarded it, stating, "That's too expensive right now." The following week, they purchased Sophia an iPhone simply because she mentioned wanting one in passing. They were not isolated incidents. Every accomplishment in my life was considered as an afterthought. I graduated from high school as valedictorian and was accepted into one of the top engineering institutions in the country. Most parents would be thrilled, right? I scarcely acknowledged it. My father simply responded, "That's nice," while gazing at his phone. My mother's only reply was, "Well, engineering was your backup since you didn't try for medical school like Alex." Alex was accepted to medical school the same month, and they celebrated with a wedding reception-themed party. They hired caterers, live music, and even had special decorations printed with the words, "Future Dr. Alexander" on them. 2 years later, when Sophia graduated from high school with ordinary grades, they hired a professional photographer, made a tribute video, and bought her a brand new automobile as a graduation present. My college graduation gift? A gift card to Best Buy. Now, let me tell you about my present career success, not to brag, but to demonstrate the stark contrast in how my family views accomplishments. For the past 2 years, I've led a team of 15 engineers in the development of a groundbreaking heart monitoring gadget. This is not just another medical device. We're talking about technology that has the potential to dramatically alter our approach to heart attack prevention. The device employs advanced AI algorithms to detect small cardiac problems up to 24 hours before a big incident, allowing clinicians critical time to treat. Our initiative has been highlighted in 3 major medical journals, and we recently received the Healthcare Innovation Award, one of the most distinguished accolades in our field. What's with the irony? Our gadget has the potential to benefit patients like the ones Alex treats, but he has never shown any interest in learning about my work. Throughout the award ceremony, my entire team's families were present, celebrating with champagne and taking proud photos. My parents? They did not even respond to the invitation. Last month, at our weekly family video call, I attempted to inform everyone about the honor. My mom interrupted me mid-sentence to ask Alex about his most recent operation schedule. They then spent 20 minutes admiring Sophia's Instagram images from her recent weekend excursion to the beach. My achievements were not even acknowledged. When I tried to bring it up again, my father simply said, "That's nice, son," before shifting the conversation to Alex's imminent department head nomination. I tried talking to them about this trend several times throughout the years. Each attempt has resulted in dismissal or gaslighting. "You're just too sensitive," my mother would say, rolling her eyes. "We treat all of our children equally," my father mumbled, avoiding eye contact as usual. Alex would smirk and add, "Maybe if you did something actually important," while Sophia would sigh deeply and label me an attention seeker. Despite their negligence, I've managed to have a prosperous life. I have a great career, good friends, and an amazing girlfriend, Stephanie, 27F, who has been really supportive throughout. She has seen personally how my family's treatment impacts me, even if I try to hide it. Last month, at a meal with her family, her mother made a greater production about my birthday than my own family has ever done. She prepared my favorite cake, which she recalled from a casual talk months earlier, and gave me a nice work-related gift. It was moving, but it also made me realize how much I had missed out on. That's what prompted my current decision. My birthday is in 3 weeks, and instead of preparing for another disappointment, I'm taking charge. I've booked a luxury cruise and organized a lavish celebration, not just any cruise. I have reserved a luxury suite package on one of the most prominent cruise lines. The program includes unique dining experiences, spa treatments, and private shore excursions. I'm inviting all of our extended family, my aunts, uncles, and cousins, as well as my close friends. The guest list contains approximately 50 people, all of whom have expressed an interest in my life and achievements over the years. But here's the kicker. I'm intentionally excluding my immediate family. The invitations have already been sent, and I have something special planned for the major celebration dinner. I'm going to show a slideshow, and not just any slideshow. I've accumulated images and memories of all the birthdays they missed, accomplishments they overlooked, and occasions they made me feel invisible. Each image will be accompanied by a related image of how they celebrated Alex or Sophia on similar occasions. Is this petty? Maybe. But it feels necessary. I've also prepared a presentation about our medical gadget project, not to brag, but to demonstrate what I've accomplished while my family was too preoccupied with Alex's medical career. The gadget has already been licensed for clinical trials, and preliminary findings indicate that it could lower cardiac death rates by up to 30%. This might potentially save thousands of lives. The word spread through the family grapevine, and the emotions have been intense. My Aunt Susan, who has always been more aware of family dynamics, immediately responded yes, and called to say she is proud of me for sticking up for myself. Several cousins have also offered their support, stating that they have noticed how I have been treated over the years but were unsure how to handle it. However, not everyone has been supportive. Some relatives describe me as petty and immature. My mother has been blowing up my phone, leaving voicemails alternating between guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to your mother after all we've sacrificed for you?" and threats, "You'll regret this behavior, young man." My father wrote his normal passive-aggressive text about how I am tearing the family apart and creating unnecessary drama. Alex called me childish and advised me to grow up and accept that some people just achieve more in life. Sophia wrote a cryptic, hostile social media post about attention-seeking behavior and toxic siblings who can't handle others' success. But my friends and Stephanie absolutely support me. My best friend from college, who has seen my family dynamics for years, said something that really resonated. Sometimes it takes a great act to disrupt destructive patterns. You've attempted to talk to them quietly for years. Maybe they'll finally listen. Stephanie has been especially fantastic throughout this. She's helped me organize every aspect of the cruise, from the meals to the decorations. She reminded me that this isn't about vengeance. It's about finally standing up for myself and refusing to be the forgotten child any longer. Her encouragement has shown me what a good family dynamic should look like. The cruise is booked, invites have been sent, and there is no going back now. Most of the visitors have already said yes, with many expressing enthusiasm for both the event and what it represents. Some relatives are plainly split between wanting to support me and being concerned about the potential for conflict with my parents. Surprisingly, most people are still opting to come. I created a special Instagram hashtag for the event and began posting teases about the approaching celebration. My mother saw these posts, despite being blocked. She created a bogus account and called my aunt in tears, screaming that I was publicly humiliating the family. Everyone understands the hypocrisy of her now caring about family disgrace after years of publicly ignoring me. I understand that this may appear radical to some people. Perhaps it is. But after 28 years of being treated as an afterthought, of seeing my siblings lauded while I am disregarded, of having my accomplishments discounted and my feelings questioned, it seems necessary. This isn't just a birthday celebration anymore. It's about taking control of my story and telling my family that I'm not going to be the invisible middle child any longer. The cruise will set off in 3 weeks. Half of me is delighted to finally celebrate myself properly, but another half is concerned about the consequences. Some friends say I should have broken contact discreetly rather than making a statement, but I believe I needed to do so, not just for me, but for any middle kid who has ever felt ignored. Am I taking things too far? Should I have taken a less dramatic approach to this situation? The cruise is paid for, and the majority of guests have confirmed, but I'm still wondering if I'm burning bridges that I might wish to cross again in the future. I would welcome any suggestions, especially from individuals who have experienced similar familial situations. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the cruise birthday celebration, and I need to tell you what happened because things have escalated beyond my expectations. The cruise itself was amazing. Almost everyone who had RSVP'd turned up, around 45 people in total, including the majority of our extended family and close friends. I presented my slideshow during the first night's welcome dinner in the ship's premium restaurant. The crowd fell silent as photos appeared on the screen. Empty chairs at my childhood birthday dinners juxtaposed with Alex's grandiose festivities. My overlooked academic successes next to Sophia's recognized occasions. What I didn't expect was my Aunt Carol to burst into tears halfway through, claiming she had never realized the enormity of the disparity. Several additional relatives stated that they had seen the unequal treatment but had not realized how systematic it was until they saw it set out chronologically. The presentation on my medical gadget project garnered a resounding response. My uncle Robert, who works in hospital administration, even approached me about deploying our monitoring system at his facility. It's funny how my professional accomplishments suddenly become impressive when validated by others. But this is where things became intense. On the second day of the vacation, my mother convinced the cruise line to let her board at our first port call. She stated she was a surprise visitor invited to the celebration. Security let her through because she had images of me on her phone that proved she was my mother. She stormed into our lunch gathering, mascara flying, yelling about how I was attempting to turn the family against her. "After all we've done for you?" she shouted in front of everyone. "You ungrateful and hateful child." Stephanie attempted to intervene, but my mother turned on her, accusing her of poisoning her son against his family. The big shock came when my normally quiet Aunt Margaret rose up and challenged my mother. "Helen," she continued firmly, "we have all seen you prefer Alex and Sophia for years. We said nothing since we did not want to intervene. But this is over now." Several more relatives joined in, expressing their own views on unfair treatment throughout the years. My mother left in tears, but the drama hadn't ended. That evening, Alex and Sophia carried out a concerted social media onslaught. They shared childhood images with notes criticizing ungrateful siblings and attention-seeking behavior. However, it backfired terribly. People began commenting with their own insights about how I had been handled differently throughout the years. The cruise lasted 3 more days, then something unexpected happened. Without my immediate family around, I experienced what genuine family support is like. My cousins shared anecdotes about their own experiences with partiality. Uncle James, whom I had always assumed was distant, confessed that he had followed my career via business publications and was truly happy of my accomplishments. When we returned, I saw over 30 missed calls from my parents and a lengthy email from my father. For the first time, he acknowledged the inequality in how they treated us, but in a way that made matters worse. We focused more on Alex because he was following the family medical tradition and on Sophia because she needed extra support. "You were always so independent and capable. We thought you didn't need the attention." The fallout has persisted. Yesterday, my mother arrived at my office, causing a disturbance in the foyer. She requested to meet with me, telling the security guard how I was breaking her heart and destroying our family. My colleagues witnessed the entire incident, and my supervisor later summoned me in to make sure I was okay. Surprisingly, he recounted his own experience breaking free from poisonous family dynamics and expressed his entire support. Stephanie's family has been fantastic throughout this. Her parents asked me over for supper last night and told me they consider me a member of their family. Her father even admitted that he wishes he'd had the fortitude to challenge his own family's partiality when he was young. The most unexpected development came from my younger relatives. Several of them have contacted me to say that seeing me stand up for myself has given them the confidence to handle similar difficulties in their own family relationships. My cousin Jenny even included our narrative into her psychology class presentation on family systems and partiality. Looking ahead, I've resolved to stick to the restrictions I've set. I'm not fully cutting off touch, but I'm no longer willing to be the forgotten child. I've blocked my siblings on social media and created email filters for my parents. My new policy is simple: I will only interact with family members who respect me and acknowledge their previous behavior. Stephanie and I are considering moving in together, possibly to a different city where her employer has an office. The distance may be beneficial, allowing everyone time to process and reflect. Thank you to everyone who has advised me on this problem. The trip may have appeared to be an extreme gesture, but it brought concerns to light that had been festering for decades. Sometimes you need a major moment to break old habits. The next post will most likely come after my parents' next wedding anniversary event, which I have already decided not to attend. Change is difficult, but important. Update 2. It has been 6 months since my last post, and I can't believe I'm writing this, but the situation has worsened much worse. What's the biggest news? Stephanie and I are engaged. What should have been a happy occasion has turned into another family drama. Following the cruise incident, I had little contact with my immediate family, preferring to focus on my relationship with Stephanie. The suggestion came at an ideal time, during a weekend trip to showcase our medical product at a healthcare conference. She's been my rock during all of this family drama. However, things turned ugly during our venue tour last weekend. We were touring our third potential wedding destination, a lovely historic building with a garden ceremony area. Halfway through the trip, I heard my mother's voice echoing down the corridor. They had somehow learned about our venue tour schedule. Later, I realized that my cousin Lauren had unintentionally disclosed it in the family group chat. My parents arrived with Alex and Sophia in tow, like some sort of intervention team. My mother immediately began telling the venue coordinator about her idea for the wedding, completely ignoring Stephanie and me. When I firmly said that they had not been invited and needed to leave, my mother burst into tears in front of the venue personnel and other couples who were visiting the space. What occurred next still seems strange. Alex, the responsible older brother, attempted to pull me away for a family discussion. When I declined, he remarked, "This is what happens when you let the middle child make important decisions." Sophia was shooting everything with her phone, perhaps for a dramatic social media post. The venue planner, bless her heart, quickly recognized the situation and had security escort them out, but not before my mother yelled that she would never forgive this betrayal, and that I was breaking your father's heart all over again. Here's the thing, they didn't just come across us. They had obviously planned this. They brought printed images from my childhood of good family occasions, which they planned to exhibit to the venue workers. My mother even brought her old wedding album and discussed family traditions that we needed to incorporate. After they left, we discovered that they had already visited our other 2 potential wedding locations earlier that week, informing the staff that they were the key decision makers. They even attempted to put down deposits to secure the dates. Stephanie was naturally shaken. Her family was appalled when they learned what had transpired. Her father, who is generally very polite, called my father immediately to inform him that their behavior was unacceptable. This sparked more controversy, with my father accusing Stephanie's family of stealing his son. We have recently chosen to drastically rethink our wedding arrangements. Neither of the venues on our original list will be used. We're now looking at venues outside of our area, and we've engaged a wedding planner who specializes in dealing with delicate family circumstances. She is putting in place stringent security measures and a thorough guest screening process. What's the silver lining to all of this? Our bond has only gotten stronger. Stephanie and I are more confident than ever that we are making the proper decision to begin our lives together away from poisonous family relationships. I've also received unexpected help from my colleagues. My employer, remembering the recent event at our office, has approved additional security measures at work. He has even volunteered to host our wedding on his vacation property if we choose a fully private setting. The difficult element isn't the drama itself. It's recognizing that my wedding day, one of life's most important occasions, is being turned into yet another battleground for my family's turmoil. But this time, I am not backing down. Stephanie and I deserve to spend our day the way we want. We're going forward with our plans, but with increased security and an extremely selective guest list. Our wedding will be a celebration of love and happiness, not just another stage for family drama. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I'd like to explain what happened at our wedding. This will be my final update since, following what happened, I've made a definitive choice about my family relationships. The wedding day began nicely. We found a stunning private estate 3 states away, hired security, and implemented stringent guest screening. Stephanie looked amazing, and our closest friends and selected family were present to support us. The morning preparations went well, and Stephanie's family made everyone feel loved and included. Despite all of our efforts, my mother was able to enter just as the officiant was about to begin the ceremony. The doors flew open, and my mother dashed down the aisle, my father trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. What came next was bizarre. Instead of the standard "I object" moment, my mother launched a full-fledged show about how ungrateful I was. She had prints of family portraits, which she began handing to stunned guests as a bizarre wedding favor. What truly crossed the line was when she turned to Stephanie and remarked, "Good luck on this one. He's been bitter his entire life." But this is where things changed. Instead of letting this wreck our day, I finally mustered the courage to speak all I'd been holding back. I came up and quietly informed my mother, "This is not about you. It never was. This refers to your incapacity to love your children equally. Today is not about the past. It is about my future with Stephanie." The security team moved to escort my parents out, but my mother had not finished. She turned to the guests and began divulging sensitive family facts, attempting to embarrass me. That's when Stephanie's father intervened. He stepped between my parents and us, with serene power, saying, "You have made your point. Now, leave my children alone." The term "children" had a strong impact. In that moment, I understood I'd discovered what I'd been hunting for all along, a family willing to adore me. After being escorted away, something unexpected occurred. Several guests, even distant cousins who had watched my family's behavior over the years, spoke up to express their observations. My cousin's wife, a family therapist, discreetly informed me that my mother's behavior exhibited classic indicators of narcissistic family dynamics. We proceeded with the ceremony, which was magnificent. Stephanie's brother delivered a heartfelt tribute at the reception. He discussed how family is more than simply DNA, but also about individuals who celebrate your accomplishments and support you during difficult times. The next morning, my father called. For the first time in his life, he admitted their favoritism, but in a way that made everything plain. He responded, "We only pushed Alex and Sophia more since you were so capable on your own. You must understand, it was easy to concentrate on them." That was it. That admission of taking the easiest road rather than being fair parents solidified my decision. I'm done trying to understand or repair this connection. I'm over expecting they'll change or suddenly become the parents I needed. I have officially changed my phone number. Our new house address is not listed. I took a promotion that puts me in charge of our company's West Coast expansion, which means we'll be moving across the nation. Stephanie's employer also has an office there, and her family has already made plans to visit. The medical device initiative continues to save lives. Last week, we received statistics indicating that our technology had avoided over 200 possible cardiac incidents. Alex still works at the same hospital that rejected our device implementation proposal, which is ironic given that it could have helped his patients. Thank you to everyone who has been following my story. Your support gave me the courage to speak up for myself and set boundaries. To anyone dealing with similar family dynamics, you deserve to be honored, you deserve to be seen. Sometimes the family you choose is more significant than the one you were born into. This will be my final update because there is nothing else to say. I'm not angry anymore, I am not hurt, I'm just finished. My new family, Stephanie, her family, our friends, and those who truly care about us, is my primary priority right now. Walking away from a situation is sometimes the healthiest option. It is not about vengeance or punishment. It is about choosing serenity, joy, and surrounding oneself with others who actually appreciate your existence. I saved my dad's company, making it a $150 million empire, while my playboy brother was still favored. He humiliated me and took the CEO role, firing me. This story is titled "My Deadbeat Brother Spent Years Partying While I Turned Dad's Failing Company Into a $150 million Empire." He fired and humiliated me during the shareholders meeting. I left quietly. Hello everyone. Before we begin, a small favor. If you love this type of work, please subscribe. It's free, helps the channel, and ensures you never miss out on great videos. Okay, let's get started. Hey Reddit, have you ever had one of those moments when you feel like everything in your life is hanging by a thread? That was where I was 10 years ago, staring at a mess I hadn't made but couldn't ignore. Let me backtrack a little. My father created this corporation from nothing. He was good at what he did, but what about money? Not very much. By the time I was 26, just out of business school, the company was losing money. My father looked 10 years older than he was, buried in tension. And what about my older brother Adam? He was not helping. Adam was 31 at the time. While I was working hard to understand supply networks and financial models, he was, let's just say, having a good time. He possessed an effortless charm that made him the favorite. Always have, always will. I knew that. It wasn't new, but it still stings. One night, I found my father sitting in his office, surrounded by mountains of unpaid invoices and contracts that were never going to be fulfilled. He didn't even notice me walking in. His desk looked like a catastrophe zone, and he didn't appear to have slept for weeks. When he finally recognized me, he remarked, "I believe it is over, son. I'm not sure how to fix this." That hit me more than I expected. I'm not sure if it was the weight of his words or the reality that everything he had worked for could crumble, but something inside me clicked. I promised him I will handle it. I'm not sure whether he believed me at the time, but he didn't argue. Honestly, I believe he was relieved that someone was stepping up. Since then, I have almost lived at the office. I understood every detail about how the corporation operated, or, more precisely, how it did not function. I became acquainted with the numbers, renegotiated contracts, and spoke with every client that passed through the door. Many of them did not want to hear from me. I was young and inexperienced, and they had already lost faith in us. I cannot tell you how many times I was told no or had doors shut in my face. But I kept showing up. People noticed that, you know? Even those who didn't like me initially began to take me seriously after a time. The first year was grueling. I was working at least 16 hours a day. My father was still officially in charge, but he delegated the majority of the decision-making authority. I drastically reduced unneeded spending. This includes some of Adam's more extravagant expenses. He had this habit of charging personal expenses to the company account, and no one ever stopped him. I halted it. He did not take it well. I recall him showing up at the office one day just to laugh at me. "Look at you playing CEO," he said. "Don't become too comfy. Dad will not let you take it." I ignored him as always. I knew how the game worked. Adam was the favorite. He was always given credit for things he didn't do, as well as the benefit of the doubt when he made mistakes. But I was not doing this for approval. I was doing it because I didn't want to waste my father's hard work. By the end of the year, things began to improve. We weren't prospering yet, but we also weren't drowning. Slowly, we began to rebuild our reputation. Clients returned, staff came to believe that their jobs were safe, and the company was genuinely profitable. It wasn't much, but it was something. However, success does not solve all problems. My father was proud of our development, but in his opinion, Adam could do no wrong. Adam was always proud of me, no matter what I accomplished. Even though Adam was rarely around, my father would discuss his economic acumen over family dinners. While everyone else was talking about vacations, I was calculating numbers and strategizing for expansion. It was not fair, but life rarely is. I decided early on that I didn't need the credit. If Adam chose to accept all of the acclaim, that was acceptable. I had larger aims in mind. My father's praise would have been good, but what mattered to me was creating the firm something to be proud of, something sustainable, something I could look back on and say, yes, I did that. The company underwent a transformation over the years. We began offering new services, created some unique technological solutions, and moved into markets we never imagined possible. Revenue progressively increased, from scraping by to reaching 8 figures, and then crossing into 9. It was weird to see something that was on the verge of collapse transform into an industry leader. I should have felt great, but there was always this underlying tension. Adam wasn't as absent anymore. As the company grew in success, he began to appear more frequently at the workplace, acting as if he were an essential part of the operation. Everyone knew better, but no one said anything, including Dad. Looking back, I believe that was the first hint that something was wrong. Adam disliked the fact that the spotlight was no longer totally focused on him. He'd joke about how I was too serious or needed a life outside of the job, but there was an edge to his remarks, as if he was preparing for something. I had no idea what it was, but I could feel it. Still, I kept my head down and concentrated on my work. I wasn't going to let his anxieties destroy all I'd worked so hard for. Or so I told myself. In actuality, I didn't believe he could cause much damage. I underestimated him. That was my first error. By the time we reached $150 million in revenue, the fractures were beginning to appear. I just hadn't realized how deep they were. I knew something was wrong the moment Dad called the shareholder meeting. It's not like he hadn't gathered us before, but this time felt different. The phrase he used, a significant announcement about the company's future, had a finality to it. I assumed it was about his retirement. After all, he had been talking about taking a step back for years, particularly after the company had steadied. I was not nervous. If anything, I was prepared. I'd been running the company without a title for years, and this meeting seemed like a formality to make it official. I wasn't seeking for a pat on the back, but I assumed this was a logical step. Who else might take over? Adam arrived late, of course. That was vintage Adam. I was already at the boardroom table, reviewing my notes for the presentation I'd prepared, when he walked in as if nothing mattered. He was always smiling, shaking hands, and cracking jokes. Everyone adored him. That's the issue with Adam. You almost forgot he'd never done anything to deserve the respect he received. He had a knack of making people feel like he belonged, even if he didn't. He threw me a wink as he sat down, which made my stomach turn. Not because I was afraid, Adam had never posed a genuine threat, but because it appeared premeditated. I brushed it off. It makes no sense to let my thoughts go wild before the conference even begins. Dad entered a few minutes later, looking exhausted but resolute. He began his normal spiel about the company's history, how important it was to him, and how proud he was of what we had accomplished. It was a little over the top, but that was Dad's style. He loved to set the tone before breaking the big news. When he finally came to the point, he stood up, fixed his glasses, and said, "It's time for me to pass the torch." He hesitated, gazing around the room, as if expecting for applause or something. After much consideration, I've decided that Adam will be the new CEO. I swear time paused for a second. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. Is Adam the CEO? Surely, this was a mistake. I looked at Adam and he was beaming from ear to ear, not surprised, not taken off guard, just grinning. That's when it struck me. He had known. He had known all along. I didn't have time to think about it because Dad continued going. I believe Adam embodies the leadership qualities this company needs to move forward, he told me. Leadership qualities? The guy who was often late for meetings? The individual whose only contribution to the organization was depleting the entertainment fund for years? Before I could say anything, Adam stood up, clutching a folder. I'd like to take a moment to address something important, he continued, his tone formal, which was amusing coming from him. He opened the folder and began flicking through the pages, making a huge out of it. Over the past few months, he continued, I've come across some troubling discrepancies in the way certain decisions have been made. He looked at me and then at the board members, as if he was trying to judge their reactions. It appears that my brother has been operating outside his authority. I couldn't believe what I heard. He went on to accuse me of conducting unapproved deals, exceeding my authority, and compromising the company's name. He portrayed me as a reckless, power-hungry character who had ran amok while Dad was distracted. It was all very cleverly worded, just vague enough to sound reasonable without providing any actual evidence. I opened my lips to defend myself, but Dad interrupted me. Let him finish, he responded, his tone calm but forceful. Adam concluded his brief presentation by saying, I only bring this up because I care deeply about the company's future, and I want to ensure we maintain the highest level of integrity. Integrity, coming from Adam? The irony was almost too much to bear. When he was finished, the room fell silence. All eyes were on Dad, who took a big breath and announced, After reviewing the situation, I've decided to terminate Marcus's employment, effective immediately. And my world came crumbling down. Security guards emerged out of nowhere, standing by the entrance, seemingly waiting for the signal to haul me out. I did not fight it. I did not even say anything. What was there to say? The decision had been decided long before the meeting, and I had fallen right into their trap. As I was gathering my belongings, Adam leaned over and muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, nothing personal, little brother. Just business. That was when I realized it wasn't all about the corporation. This was about him demonstrating something to me, Dad, and anybody who had ever compared us. He wasn't concerned about the company's future, he was concerned about taking it from me. I walked out of that boardroom with all the decorum I could summon, but inside I was seething. Not only was I caught off guard, but Adam had used years of hard effort against me. He had not only taken the job, but also the narrative. By the time I arrived to my car, my phone was already flooded with texts from coworkers, friends, and even a few board members who were taken aback by what had occurred. I disregarded them all. I needed to think. The drive home was a haze. I continued repeating the encounter in my thoughts, trying to figure out why I had missed the signs. Looking back, they were all there. Adam coming up at the workplace more frequently, Dad being abnormally secretive, and even some of the board members behaving distant recently. I'd been so preoccupied with operating the company that I hadn't noticed the storm developing right under my nose. When I arrived home, I sat in the dark for hours, trying to make sense of everything. How could Dad, the guy who had seen me devote my life to this enterprise, chose Adam? Was it loyalty? Blind favoritism? Or was I just so replaceable in his eyes? Whatever the cause, one thing was certain. I was out and Adam was in. But here's the thing about Adam. He's terrific at portraying the character, but he's lousy at recognizing the stakes. While he was busy celebrating his victory, he didn't realize I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Far from it. I had spent years establishing more than simply a business, I had created leverage. And while they were busy scheming my ruin, they didn't bother to investigate how deep my roots were. That night, I reached a choice. I was not going to fight Adam directly. That's what he expected and wanted, a chance to portray me as bitter and spiteful. No, I planned to do something much smarter. I was going to wait. And when the time came, I was going to remind them all of who started this empire in the first place. The first thing I did was contact a few important employees who had been with the company through thick and thin. These were not spectacular, high-profile individuals. Rather, they served as the company's backbone. The IT staff, a few senior developers, and 2 managers who had worked with me during those difficult early years. I knew they'd answer my phone because, unlike Adam, I'd taken the effort to establish relationships. I didn't tell them everything, I didn't have to. All I said was that there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and if they trusted me, they should wait a few days before making any major choices. Nobody asked questions or hesitated. That was all I needed to know about their loyalty. Next, I focused on the infrastructure. The advantage of rebuilding a company from the ground up is that you know where every piece fits. Over time, I surreptitiously established a separate business to manage our most precious assets, including intellectual property, customer contracts, and proprietary software. On paper, it was simply a support firm designed to streamline operations. In truth, it was the center of the business, and I owned it entirely. Why hadn't I informed anyone about it? Because I knew something like this was going to happen eventually. Maybe not exactly this, but I had a feeling Adam would try to play some form of power play. What about Dad? Let's just say I gave up expecting him to have my back a long time ago. With everything in place, I spent the remainder of the weekend getting receipts, metaphorically speaking. I sifted through years of documents, emails, contracts, and bank records, gathering evidence of Adam's neglect, mismanagement, and blatant dodgy activity. Some of it was minor issues, such as excessive expenditure and missed deadlines. Other issues were more serious. Side dealings with competitors, questionable transactions, and moves that jeopardized the company's future. By Sunday night, I had a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. But that wasn't the endgame. My intention was not to completely ruin Adam. That would have been too simple, and it would have accomplished nothing. My goal was to remind everyone, Adam, Dad, and the board, why I was the one who had originally turned the firm around. On Monday morning, I awoke earlier than usual. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I wanted to witness the aftermath in real time. I brewed coffee, put up my laptop in my home office, and connected to the company's internal network. Yes, I still had access. You'd think a guy like Adam, with all his leadership abilities, would have thought to withdraw my credentials right away. But no. The first thing I did was activate the failsafe I had programmed into the system years ago. There were no viruses or other dangerous software involved. It was merely a small script that transferred all internal communications to a secure server under my control. Emails, memos, meeting invitations, it all went through me. Then I focused my attention on Adam's PC. Again, no hacking was necessary. He hadn't even changed his password. It was the same one he'd used since college. I uploaded a video file to his desktop and set it to play automatically when he checked in. What about the video? A highlight reel of his worst decisions, replete with timestamps and accompanying documentation. It wasn't spectacular or too dramatic, it was simply a cold, stark reminder of his inadequacy. By 8:15 a.m., the commotion had started. Adam walked into the office, looking smug as ever, and I observed him through the security feed. He sat down at the CEO's desk, turned on his computer, and leaned back in his chair, as if he owned the place. A second later, the video began playing. At first, he appeared bewildered. Then his face flushed red. He banged the keyboard a few times in an attempt to close the file, but it remained open. Every screen in his office showed the same film in repeat. Meanwhile, the notifications began. Board members, department heads, and major investors' inboxes began to fill up one by one with emails. Each email comprised a piece of evidence I had gathered, along with a brief description of how Adam's actions had harmed the organization. I kept the tone professional, no accusations, just facts. Down in the lobby, federal agents entered. I had informed the authorities about some of Adam's more questionable financial practices, and they were ready to speak with him. What about the cherry on top? An email from the IT department notifying the resignation. They had all signed contracts with my subsidiary and were no longer employed by the corporation. The email concluded with a simple statement. We stand with the person who built this company. I saw Adam try to hold it together. He phoned IT support, but no one answered. He called Dad, but his phone went directly to voicemail. He even tried calling me at one point, but I didn't answer. By mid-morning, the board had called an emergency meeting. Adam was summoned, and from what I saw on the security stream, it was not a friendly conversation. I didn't need to hear what was said in that room to know how things ended. By noon, Adam had been let out of the building. I didn't feel smug or vindicated as I watched the events unfold. If anything, I felt relaxed. This was not about vengeance, it was about balance. Adam had spent years relying on charm and manipulation, but when it came down to it, he couldn't keep it up. What about Dad? Well, he had made his decision? I wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain, the game had changed. And for the first time in a long time, I had complete control of the situation. The news quickly spread. Employees were muttering by the afternoon about federal authorities arriving, Adam leaving, and the CEO being hauled out of the premises. In the age of immediate communication, this type of turmoil cannot be restrained. By the next morning, rumors had turned into headlines. Company scandal rocks leadership team. There were no names yet, but everyone understood who they were talking about. The stock price plummeted. It wasn't a steady drop, It was a free fall. Investors began withdrawing as soon as they discovered the company's fundamental assets were no longer in its hands. That was intentional, of course. The subsidiary I'd established to house it all had been legally autonomous for years, and it was now the foundation of my new business. Adam inherited a bright, empty shell. Meanwhile, I kept my head down. I wasn't about to show up in the middle of this and look like the man who rubbed salt in the wound. I'd already done enough to disrupt Adam's alleged authority. The following step was not about myself, but about the individuals who truly made the company operate. That morning, I wrote an email to every employee. It was short and to the point. Subject: a new opportunity to the present staff. You have witnessed the happenings of the previous day. Many of you are probably concerned about your future. I want you to know that your efforts and dedication have not gone unappreciated. I'm inviting you to join a new organization where your contributions will be respected, your jobs will be secure, and you'll be working with leaders that value innovation and honesty. Your jobs and benefits will remain unchanged, with more support and possibilities for advancement. If you're interested, you may learn more here. Link. There is no pressure. This is totally your decision. Thank you for what you have done. You deserve better, and I hope I can deliver it. Marcus. By the end of the day, my inbox was swamped with responses. People weren't simply signing on. They were thanking me for giving them an out. It was surreal to hear notes from people who had persevered with the company through its worst days, telling me they believed in me, not the organization that had just collapsed. Over 93% of the employees accepted the offer within hours. Adam, on the other hand, was not doing so well. By midweek, the probe into his financial actions had become public. That's when the true dirt came out. It was discovered that he had been siphoning money via forged vendor contracts. He'd also been collaborating with competitors, selling client information in exchange for under-the-table money. I was aware of some of it, but seeing it all laid out in black and white was overwhelming. The officials acted promptly. Adam was legally charged with fraud, embezzlement, and a variety of other charges. He was released on bail, but his reputation was ruined. The media had a field day, portraying him as the poster child for nepotism gone bad. Every element of his antics, the parties, the reckless spending, and the backroom deals, was brought to light. And then there was Dad. He went radio silent for the first few days, most likely trying to digest what had just transpired. I can only imagine how he felt when he realized that the son he had trusted and favored for decades had turned out to be a massive liability. The board was not spared either. The investors who remained sought answers, and the remaining members scrambled to minimize the damage. But what could they say? The company's basis has been pulled out from underneath them. Everything that made the business valuable was now integrated into my new operation. That week, I met with the leadership team of my new employer. These were the individuals who had followed me out of the chaos. The IT director, the head of operations, a few important managers, and the core development team. We sat around a conference table in the new office space I had secretly reserved months before. It wasn't spectacular, just an efficient modern setup with plenty of room to expand. The first order of business, I continued, is to ensure that everyone feels stable here. No shocks or gimmicks, we've all gone through enough of that. Everyone nodded around the table. I could see relief on their expressions. For years, they had been caught in the crossfire of poor judgment and partiality. They could now focus on their task without worrying about what Adam would do next. The change was not without its challenges. As expected, there were legal challenges, and a few clients required additional reassurance that this was the appropriate decision. But, altogether, things went more smoothly than I had expected. By the end of the month, we were completely operational, and I could finally breathe a bit easier. Meanwhile, the original corporation continued its decline. With no assets, no leadership, and no clear path forward, it became a cautionary tale in the corporate world. The stock price had been artificially inflated by years of hype and was now worth pennies. Investors left, litigation piled up, and the remaining staff struggled to find new positions. Adam, obviously, attempted to spin the story in his favor. He spoke to a local newspaper, stating he had been set up and that the probe was politically motivated. It did not land. By that point, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and even his father refused to defend him publicly. In this scenario, justice was not about destroying Adam, but about holding him accountable. For far too long, he had left it to others to clean up his messes. This time, there was no one left to save him. When the dust settled, the message was clear. Leadership isn't about titles or favoritism. It's about doing the work, winning trust, and accepting responsibility. Adam had failed at all three, and he was now reaping the consequences. I wasn't out for retribution or gloating. I was determined to create something new, free of the faults of the past. The aftermath had been chaotic, but it was also vital. Sometimes the only way to mend something damaged is to dismantle it and start afresh. A week after Adam's public humiliation, I received the call I was expecting. It wasn't from Adam, but from Dad. He'd been keeping his distance ever since things went wrong, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he reached out. He left a short and direct message on my phone. "We need to talk. Your mother and I are going to see you tomorrow." I did not respond. What was there to say? I understood exactly why he was calling. It wasn't an apology, and it certainly wasn't an admission that he had made a mistake. No, this was about the fallout. The tanking stock price, the litigation, the investors bailing out, and the fact that his entire retirement fund was now invested in a company that was on the verge of failure. The next morning, Dad and Mom arrived at my new company's office on time. I had purposefully kept the place low-key, but I was not trying to hide. They discovered me easy enough. When they walked in, I realized how much they had aged in such a short period of time. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days, and Mom appeared to have been sobbing a lot. They both sat across from me in the small conference room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Dad was the first to speak. "Marcus," he said, his voice straining, "you've made your point, but we need to figure out how to fix this." I sat back in my chair and crossed my arms. "What exactly do you want fixed?" I asked. "What a mess Adam made? The company you allowed him to destroy? Or the reality that your retirement savings are worthless?" Mom flinched, and Dad's expression stiffened. "This isn't the time for blame," he added, trying to remain calm. "We are family. We need to get together and figure this out." I nearly laughed. Now he wants to discuss family? After years of allowing Adam to walk all over me? After firing me in the most humiliating manner possible? Now he was interested in unity? "You don't get to play the family card now, Dad," I responded calmly. "You made it pretty clear where your loyalty lies." He sighed deeply and ran a palm over his face. "I didn't know what Adam was doing," he told me. "Didn't you?" I shot back. "You may not have known the specifics, but you knew he was unqualified. You knew he was overspending. You knew he didn't show up half the time. And you let him take control anyhow." Mom began to speak, but I held up a hand to silence her. "Don't," I replied, shaking my head. "You're not allowed to defend him either. You both made the bed. Now you want me to clean up?" There was a prolonged hush. Finally, Dad stated, "Your mother and I are in a difficult situation. Everything we have saved is related to their firm. If we don't work something out, we may lose the house." And there it was. The real reason for their visit. It was not about Adam or the company. It was about money. I took a deep breath and leaned forward on the table. "I'm going to help you," I said. Relief flooded across their cheeks, but I wasn't finished. "This is how it's going to work," I explained. "I will acquire your company shares at their original value. That will allow you to keep your home and retire comfortably. However, there are some conditions." Dad frowned. "What type of conditions?" "First," I said, "you both sign a non-disclosure agreement. That means no telling anyone, friends, relatives, or reporters, what happened to Adam or the company. Second, you retire peacefully. No more tinkering or attempting to mend things. Third, the money is not free of conditions. You will receive a monthly allowance, and any big expenses must be approved by a trustee." Mom seemed to want to object, but Dad grabbed her arm. "That seems extreme," he responded cautiously. "Extreme?" I repeated, reclining back in my seat. "Dad, I'm being generous. I do not owe you anything. After everything that had happened, I could have gone away and left you to deal with the mess you created. But I am not doing this for you. I'm doing it because deep down, I still care about this family, even though you don't deserve it." That final line impacted more than I expected. I thought Dad was going to protest, but he just nodded slowly. "Fine," he said. "We'll sign whatever you need us to sign." Mom glanced at him with wide eyes. "Leonard?" "It's the best we're going to get," he interrupted her. I stood up, signaling that the meeting had ended. "I'll have the paperwork ready before tomorrow. Once you sign, the cash will be transferred within 48 hours. They also stood, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. This was the man who had always urged me to accept responsibility, admit my faults, and strive for improvement. And here he was, crushed and defeated, pleading for a bailout from the son he'd neglected for years. As they went, Dad looked back and said, "You're a better man than I gave you credit for." I did not respond. Words no longer meant much to me, especially when they came from him. When the door closed behind them, I sat back down and stared at the table for quite some time. This was hardly the victory I had expected. It did not feel like a victory at all. But it was required. Sometimes doing the right thing does not feel pleasant. It simply feels like a satisfactory conclusion. I didn't feel relieved or satisfied the day my parents signed the papers. Instead, I felt a peculiar sense of emptiness. It was finished. They had accepted the terms, and the money was on its way to them. I knew that was the correct thing to do, but it didn't seem like a victory. If anything, it seemed like I was finally bringing an end to something that had been broken for years. But life does not allow for introspection. While my parents adjusted to their new financial reality, I had a firm to run, one that, for the first time, was fully mine. The transfer from the old company to my new venture went more smoothly than I had anticipated. Most of the personnel came over willingly, and the important clients stayed with us. It wasn't only about loyalty. They recognized the value of the relationships and mechanisms we'd established. If anything, the tumult surrounding Adam's demise had strengthened their faith in me. They realized who the true driving force behind the organization had been all along. One of the most significant adjustments I implemented was how we worked as a corporation. I had learned a lot from my blunders in the past, particularly regarding honesty and communication. Under the previous regime, decisions were frequently taken behind closed doors, leaving people rushing to adjust without a clear explanation. I wanted to do things differently. We began holding weekly all-hands meetings where I lay out everything: progress, challenges, and impending goals. No fluff, no business jargon, just plain talk about where we were and where we were going. The first few meetings were slightly awkward. People were unaccustomed to that kind of candor, and I could see some of them were waiting for the other shoe to drop. But, over time, they began to relax. They began to trust me when I claimed we were in this together. One of the most pleasant moments occurred around a month in, when one of the senior devs approached me after a meeting. He'd been with the company for years, one of the silent workhorses who got the job done without making a fuss. "Marcus," he began. "I just wanted to thank you. I've been here a long time, and this is the first time I've felt that someone is truly concerned about what we're doing." It took me off guard. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded and said, "That means a lot. Thank you for staying with us." Those brief moments reminded me why I was doing this. It was not about proving something to Adam, Dad, or anyone else. It was about creating something meaningful, something people would be happy to be a part of. By the conclusion of the first quarter, we had achieved not just stability but also growth. Revenue was increasing, client retention was at an all-time high, and we had even begun bringing in new business. The team was electrified, and the workplace was alive with a level of excitement I hadn't seen in years. One day, as I walked through the workplace, I overheard two employees conversing by the coffee machine. They didn't notice me, so I didn't interrupt. "Honestly," one of them admitted, "this is the finest thing that could have occurred. The previous company was a complete mess. I feel like we have a future here." The other person nodded. "Yes, Marcus gets it. He is not just sitting in his office barking instructions, he is genuinely developing something with us." Hearing that was more satisfying than receiving any award or accolade. It wasn't simply the numbers or the growth that mattered, it was the fact that people believed in our mission. Meanwhile, the old corporation was just scraping by. The lawsuits were stacking up, the stock was basically worthless, and the remaining employees were leaving as quickly as they could. Adam, from what I heard, was attempting to avoid the spotlight, but the harm to his reputation had already been done. He was no longer a name people wanted to associate with. By 6 months, the new company had established itself as the industry leader. We were not only surviving, we were innovating. We developed a new product line that improved logistics for small firms, and it grew faster than we expected. It felt like everything I'd been working on for the previous 10 years was finally coming together. For years, I'd fought to prove myself, to Dad, Adam, and everybody else who had ever doubted me. But in that moment I knew I didn't have to prove anything anymore. I had created something real, something that would last. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. It's been 3 years since everything went down. If I'm being honest, I still think about it now and then, not in a bad way, but in a way that makes me wonder how I survived it all. Despite the fact that it drastically altered my life, the entire incident feels like a distant memory. My new company, ours, is booming. When I say thriving, I mean we've achieved every goal I ever imagined imaginable. The team we formed after leaving the previous organization has evolved into something I am very proud of. We are not only lucrative, but also respected. People in the industry regard us as the gold standard, The type of organization that others strive to replicate. That feels good, not because of the recognition, but because it confirms that we are doing things correctly. But let us be honest, prosperity does not erase the past. Every now and then, I find myself going through old emails or looking at news headlines about the consequences. Adam's name crops up on occasion, usually as part of a cautionary story about leadership or nepotism. Last I heard, he was working at a low-level job to avoid detection. I don't maintain tabs on him, but it's difficult not to hear things when your name and his are still vaguely related in some circles. My folks have settled into a tranquil retirement. Mom occasionally sends me emails with updates on their new activities or the neighborhood potlucks they have started hosting. Dad, however, has been mute. I haven't communicated with him since the day he signed the papers in my office. I don't think he's bitter, but I also don't think he understands how to rebuild the bridge he burnt. And frankly, I'm not sure I'd let him try. It's funny how much perspective time provides you. When everything first started, I was so intent on proving myself, showing everyone that I was the one who deserved to lead. But 3 years later, I realize I don't care about it anymore. People who know and work with me already understand the type of person I am. I don't need to shout my triumphs from the rooftops, and I certainly don't need confirmation from those who question me. For those who are wondering how the quiet one came out on top, let me explain. While others were busy posturing and playing politics, I was doing the work. While they were making noise, I was planning. Because, at the end of the day, being the loudest or flashiest is not what defines success. It's about strategy, resilience, and recognizing what you're capable of, even when no one else does. The peacocks may attract attention, but what about the eagles? We are the ones who observe things from above. And that's the end of the story, or the beginning, depending on your perspective. Thank you for sticking around. Please let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, or tales to offer. I was a shadow to my sister's piano career, exploited as my family's ATM. They even used my money for her secret engagement party. I, 35F, am a senior investment analyst for a major Manhattan firm, yet to my family, I am nothing more than a personal ATM. I've been hesitant to tell this tale, but recent developments have compelled me to seek outside viewpoints on a subject that has dominated my life for years. Growing up, our entire family revolved on my younger sister, 31F. She was a piano prodigy who began performing at the age of 4. My earliest memories are of helping Mom, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, and Dad, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, prepare for her recitals, ensuring that everything was just right for their little star. While other kids were learning to ride bikes or going on playdates, I was learning how to iron performance costumes and organize sheet music. Make sure your sister has everything she needs for practice, Mom would say, barely looking up from her phone as she recorded another video of my sister's performance. Don't forget to cook dinner. We'll be late tonight due to her master's class. By the age of 11, I was effectively controlling the home. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, it all fell on me. Because your sister needs to focus on her music, was the incessant refrain. I recall the day I won the state mathematics competition in 8th grade. I went home, clutching my award, only to find Mom furiously preparing for my sister's performance. That's nice, honey, she commented distractedly. But could you please assist your sister practice? She needs to perfect this piece for the Carnegie Hall Youth Showcase next month. The trophy wound up in a box in my closet, alongside other forgotten accomplishments. The tendency persisted throughout high school. While my sister traveled for competitions and master lessons, I stayed at home and maintained flawless marks. My parents paid thousands of dollars for my sister's private lessons, special music camps, and custom-made performance apparel. Meanwhile, I had to fight for essential school materials. We need to be practical, Dad would say. Your sister's career development requires all of our resources. I was not permitted to participate in any after-school events since someone needed to be present at home to prepare for my sister's nighttime practice sessions. When I indicated an interest in joining the debate team, Mom looked at me as if I had suggested we burn down the home. How could you be so selfish? She asked. Your sister needs a peaceful, encouraging atmosphere to practice. You understand how crucial this is to her future. Every family gathering became a recital. Relatives would gather around the piano, gushing about my sister's skill as I served refreshments and cleaned up afterwards. Such a helpful girl, they'd say patronizingly before turning back to compliment my sister. I learned to be invisible, moving softly through our house like a ghost, ensuring that everything ran properly while drawing no notice to myself. My parents only truly noticed me when anything went wrong with my sister's routine. Then I became visible, but just as a target for blame. If she had a poor performance, it was because I had not provided a calm setting for her practicing. If she felt fatigued during a competition, it was because I hadn't properly prepared her meals. During my senior year of high school, I was admitted into several top universities on partial scholarships. When I showed my parents the acceptance letters, their reaction was lukewarm, at best. "We can't help with any expenses," Dad stated firmly during supper. "Your sister's career development needs all our resources. Besides, you're good with household management, maybe you should look into becoming a housekeeper." That's when our neighbors, the Wilsons, intervened. They had seen me grow up and how I helped at their little accounting office after school while waiting for my sister's practices to finish. Mrs. Wilson, 55 degrees Fahrenheit at the time, had always regarded me as a second daughter, taking an interest in my accomplishments and promoting my academic endeavors. They promised to help with my education fees by establishing up a work-study program at their company. My parents didn't complain, they appeared happy to have me taken care of, so they could concentrate only on my sister. When I attempted to talk about my college plans, Mom cut me off. "We trust the Wilsons to handle it," she added, immediately returning to her phone and organizing my sister's next appearances. "Just make sure this doesn't interfere with your responsibilities at home." The Wilsons became my lifeline. Their encouragement extended beyond financial aid. They demonstrated what it meant to be respected for my own qualities and accomplishments. Mrs. Wilson attended my college orientation when my parents were unable to come due to my sister's summer music festival. Mr. Wilson, 57 million at the time, educated me on financial management and sparked my interest in investment research. Looking back, I understand the Wilsons saw something my parents didn't. A young woman with promise beyond being someone's support network. They supported my education not because they had to, but because they believed in me. Their advice helped me get internships, which led to my current career as a senior investment analyst. Throughout college, I had little touch with my family, only traveling home for important holidays. Each visit followed the same pattern. My sister conducting court in the living room while I assisted in the kitchen, listening to relatives praise her most recent accomplishments. My own accomplishments, Dean's List accolades, internships at famous firms, job offers, were largely overlooked. Everything changed 10 years ago, at what was supposed to be my sister's breakthrough moment. She was preparing for the prestigious Chicago International Piano Competition, which my parents were confident would propel her career to new heights. They'd spent months working out every element, from her performance pieces to her stage demeanor. Even her food was methodically planned to keep her in top-performing condition. The injury occurred during an especially intensive practice session. She was working on Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, a notoriously difficult piece that she persisted on performing despite her teacher's objections. I was at work when Mom called me, her voice quivering with hysteria. "Get to Northwestern Memorial ASAP. Your sister, her wrist, you must come right soon." I discovered them in the ER. Mom screaming violently, Dad pacing like a caged animal, and my sister pale and mute, cradling her right wrist. The diagnosis was devastating. Significant tendon injury with potential nerve involvement. The doctor's words sounded like hammers in the sterile hospital room. Significant rehabilitation is required. Prognosis is unknown. Professional performance might no longer be possible. The next few months were a blur of specialists, second opinions, and increasingly frantic attempts at treatment. My parents liquidated everything they could, including Dad's prized vintage Mustang collection, Mom's family antiques, and even their retirement savings. They flew in European specialists, attempted experimental treatments, and sought advice from alternative medicine practitioners, anything that gave them hope. I watched their finances vanish as they sought miraculous treatments. When their financial advisor suggested bankruptcy protection, they looked at him as if he had suggested abandoning their child. "Money is just money," Dad said. "Our daughter's talent is priceless." I saw he said daughter, as he normally does. Reality set in gradually, like a slow-moving storm. Despite multiple treatments, my sister's wrist never recovered the strength and flexibility required for professional performance. The physicians eventually verified our fears. Her career as a concert pianist was ended. It was more than simply the loss of a profession. It was the dissolution of our entire family mythos. My parents became older in just a few months. Mom stopped fixing her hair and cosmetics, and spent days in her bathrobe viewing footage of my sister's previous performances. Dad, who had always been the family's rock, began missing appointments, bills, and even food. Sometimes they appeared lost, as if their identities were inextricably linked to my sister's musical career. That's when their focus moved to me. But not in the way I had secretly wanted for all those years. They regarded me not as their daughter who could help them recover, but as a financial answer to their escalating issues. I had recently gotten a huge promotion at my firm, becoming a senior analyst before the age of 30. an accomplishment that would have gone unnoticed if it hadn't come with a substantial income rise. "You're doing so well," Mom said on one of her first calls to me in months. Her prideful tone was swiftly followed by, "Your sister needs help with her medical bills. Since you're in such a good position now?" The request was wrapped in layers of remorse and obligation, given with the skillful manipulation that only a mother can perform. At first, I agreed to make a modest monthly donation of $1,000 to help with my sister's therapy and living expenses. It appeared sensible, even necessary. They were family, after all, and I was finally able to give back. The thankfulness looked sincere at first. Mom phoned me on a regular basis to check on my sister's progress, while Dad wrote awkward but emotional thank you emails. But the requests kept coming, each one bigger than the last, with increasingly convoluted excuses. My sister wanted a new automobile because public transportation made her anxious following the incident. My sister's recuperation was hampered by negative energy in the house, which required repair. They required a family vacation because emotional healing is just as important as physical therapy. Then came the credit cards. Just for emergencies, they said, and I was added as an authorized user to their accounts. Their concept of an emergency was surprisingly fluid. Shopping became retail therapy. Costly restaurants were necessary for maintaining family bonds during a crisis, and luxury spa retreats were considered essential for recovery. Monthly expenses rose like ivy on a wall, gradually at first, then abruptly overpowering. $1,000 became $2,000, and finally $3,000. Each increment was followed by detailed explanations and emotional manipulation. "After everything we've done for you," became their regular refrain, though I couldn't recall exactly what they'd done. When I hesitated over a particularly substantial request, Mom reminded me of all the sacrifices they'd made, conveniently forgetting that those sacrifices were solely for my sister. My buddy Rachel, 35F, whom I've known since college, was watching the situation with growing concern. "They're not treating you like family," she explained during our weekly dinner at her parents' restaurant. "They're treating you like an ATM with legs." I dismissed her concerns at first, making excuses about family commitments and filial duty. But her comments stayed with me like burrs. The Wilsons, my long-standing mentors, were also concerned. Mrs. Wilson took me aside after our monthly lunch meeting. "Honey," she began, her face wrinkled with concern. "This is not support, it is exploitation. We didn't help you advance your job so you could become your family's personal banker." The breaking point came last week, when I realized they had spent more than $122,000 on my sister's therapeutic shopping spree, without telling me. The expenses included designer clothes, spa treatments, and a weekend at a luxury resort, all explained as necessary for her emotional recovery. When I tried to talk about setting boundaries, Mom fell into tears and gave an Oscar-worthy act about how I was abandoning the family in our time of need. Later that night, Dad called. His voice was gruff and disapproving, using the same authoritarian tone that had kept me in line throughout my youth. "Your sister requires our assistance more than ever," he admonished. "How can you be so selfish when she's still trying to find her way? We've raised you better than this." The irony of his words, "we raised you," hit me like a physical blow. Did they raise me, or did I raise myself under the influence of their obsession with my sister? Yesterday, I received another credit card statement for $115,000 for a health retreat that I never approved. When I called to inquire, my sister answered the phone. "You make so much money," she added dismissively, with the same arrogant tone I remembered from childhood. "Stop being stingy. You know Mom and Dad need this to deal with everything they've been through because of me." I'm writing from my office on the 47th level of our Manhattan building, surrounded by the trappings of my success, despite, rather than because of, my family's support. The chart on my second monitor depicts my family's financial abuse in cold, hard statistics. Over the last year, they've spent more than $150,000 of my money, which is more than most families' annual income. My financial consultant is concerned about the implications for my long-term financial security. My therapist gently indicates that it is important to set hard boundaries. Rachel alternates between providing her guest room and volunteering to tell my family where they can go, in many languages, thanks to her worldwide business experience. But every time I consider cutting them off, I remember the little girl who simply wanted her parents to appreciate her accomplishments. The adolescent who believed that if she worked hard enough, someone would eventually recognize her as more than a support system. The young woman who still hopes that her family would see her as more than a resource. I'm currently at a crossroads, confronting decisions I never intended to make. The Wilsons, who have been more like parents to me than my own, advise I should protect myself. Rachel provides practical assistance and a secure place to ponder. My therapist discusses boundaries and self-respect, Words that appear easy but bear the weight of decades of familial relationships. I'm having trouble with questions that don't seem to have any correct answers. Am I being ruthless by considering financial constraints? Is it immoral to want appreciation for my own achievements? Should I simply accept that this is my job in the family, the dependable one, the responsible one, the human ATM? I really don't know anymore. Update 1. My world imploded yesterday when I found on Instagram that my parents are presently in Hawaii, not for a vacation, but for my sister's secret engagement party, which they paid for with my credit card. During lunch, I was aimlessly scrolling through my feed when I came across a post from a mutual acquaintance that stopped me cold. Paradise with the future wife, what's Josh, engagement bliss to Hawaii. There she was, beaming on a beautiful beach, standing next to her boyfriend, now fiancé, with our parents and his family in the background. They had been there for 3 days. I went 3 days without hearing a word from you. Confused and hurt, I opened my banking app. The charges struck me like fists. First-class flights to Honolulu cost $24,800. Grand WEA Resort, 3 Ocean View suites for $21,600. Additional expenses include a welcome meal, spa treatments, a sailing excursion, and a private beachside dinner for $12,000. My hands shook as I dialed Mom's number. When she responded, I could hear Hawaiian music and laughter in the background. "Oh honey," she explained casually, "your father and I just decided to take a short break. You're aware of how tough things have been lately? A short break at the Grand WEA with my sister's fiancé's complete family? That kind of break cost more than $58,000 on my credit card." Silence. Muffled voices. Then my sister got on the phone, her remarks oozing with entitlement. "Listen, Miss Executive," she snarled. "You are not required here. You are no longer family, but rather a walking ATM. Nobody wants to hear about your valuable career as we celebrate my engagement." I urged myself to be calm. "That ATM just paid nearly $60,000 for your little party." She laughed coldly. "That's what you're good at, isn't it? Keep doing your fancy job, and we'll enjoy spending your money. It's the only thing you're helpful for." Always was. The call went dead. Within minutes, they had blocked me on all platforms. Mom sent a final message that read, "We're all tired of your negative attitude and jealousy. Please leave us alone. You've spoiled enough precious moments for your sister." Something cold and hard solidified in my chest. My hands remained steady when I accessed my banking app. Each click felt like it broke another link in the chain that had connected me to their torture. Click. Hotel reservations are canceled. Click. Spa packages and excursions are canceled. Click. Return flight tickets have been canceled. Click. Mom's card is permanently deactivated. The aftermath was immediate. My phone burst with calls and messages. "Mom. It's an emergency. Call immediately. Dad says. Fix this quickly. You are embarrassing the family. Sister. You better get this right. Number. Hawaii." The future in-laws, without a doubt. As the hours passed, their tone changed. Mom said, "Sweetie, please, we can talk." Father. "We'll pay you back." Sister. "Stop being so petty, it is my engagement." Then my sister sent out a social media blast. "I can't believe my own sister would spoil the best time of my life. She has always been envious, but this is a new low." Toxic family. Heartbroken. I'd been quiet long enough. I shared everything, screenshots, credit card statements, and messages. The truth about their hidden celebration, unapproved charges, and nasty statements. The tide shifted immediately. People rallied in support as they realized the truth behind their carefully prepared narrative. Mutual friends informed me of the consequences of my acts. My parents needed to borrow money merely to purchase economy flights home. They had to check out of the Grand WEA in front of other visitors. My sister had a temper tantrum in the lobby, which ended up on TikTok. The actual explosion occurred when the fiancé's family discovered they had been caught up in my family's web of deception. They'd been promised a fully compensated luxury holiday, only to find out they were part of a plot to exploit the rich sister. The engagement itself is being called into question, with the fiancé's family questioning the entire arrangement. I am writing this update from my friend Rachel's guest room. The Wilsons have shown their support, reminding me that true family does not treat you like an ATM. I have locked all of my accounts, and my lawyer is drafting cease and desist letters. What is the most difficult part? I don't feel anything. There is no guilt. There's no sadness. Just relief. It's as if I've finally laid down a burden I've been carrying my entire life. Perhaps that is what freedom feels like. Update 2. My Hawaii post has had an illuminating impact. What began as a family quarrel has revealed years of deception to a much larger audience than planned. 3 days after my previous post, I received an email from my sister's fiance's mother. We met in a quiet cafe in Manhattan. We had no idea, she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Your parents informed us that they were wealthy financial managers, and that your sister was taking a sabbatical from her concert piano career. They stated that this luxury vacation was a gift to both families. She revealed specifics concerning my family's dishonesty. They portrayed themselves as wealthy sophisticates, telling anecdotes about their great occupations and my sister's temporary hiatus from performing. The realization struck their family hard. James is devastated, she continued. Not for the money, but for the lies. He confronted my sister about using my credit cards without authorization. She chuckled and stated, "She's my sister, her money is family money." That evening, James ended their engagement. I can't build a life with someone who thinks it's okay to steal from and exclude their own sister, he told her. He returned the ring and walked away, his family fully supporting his decision. My sister's reaction was explosive. She recorded a lengthy Instagram live tirade blaming me for losing her chance at happiness, and when that failed to get traction, she began contacting my colleagues, spreading stories about how I abandoned my family during their time of need. However, her efforts backfired. My documented post had already made the rounds. People had seen the credit card statements, read the texts, and recognized the pattern of exploitation. Each fresh attack from her simply strengthened my narrative. My parents' professional consequences has been devastating. Dad's consulting customers began to distance themselves, Mom's social position in her charity circles plummeted, and their carefully cultivated image was broken. They've been trying to reach me via every imaginable method, and the tone of their messages alternates between appealing and demanding. We are still your parents. You can't just cut us off after all we've done for you. Your sister is devastated. How can you be so cruel? We'll pay you back, just give us time. They showed up at my workplace yesterday. Security turned them away, but not before Mom made a fuss in the lobby, wailing about her ungrateful daughter. My colleagues have been quite sympathetic, with several sharing their own experiences with family financial abuse. The Wilsons have been my rock throughout this. Mrs. Wilson helped me update all of my banking information and set up additional security measures, and Mr. Wilson is aiding me in documenting every unlawful transaction for possible legal action. Rachel's parents offered me their guest house for as long as I needed it. Family doesn't steal from family, Rachel's mom told me. And they certainly don't exclude their own daughter from family celebrations while spending her money. My sister's ex-fiancé's family has been surprisingly supportive, openly defending my actions and sharing their own experiences with my family's dishonesty. Their narrative has helped others understand the full extent of the manipulation. My parents sent me a big envelope today containing a promissory note for the Hawaii expenses, as well as a letter about healing our family bonds and moving forward together. They advised family therapy and regular meals to help re-establish trust. However, there was no acknowledgement of their decades of emotional abuse, or of how they'd methodically abused me while removing me from the family. The letter spoke of misunderstandings, as if $58,000 in illegal charges and a secret family celebration were simple mistakes. I returned the letter unopened, accompanied with a formal cease and desist notification from my lawyer. Some extended family members have attempted to mediate. They're still your parents, they explain. Family is family. But here's the thing, they've never treated me like family. I was their housekeeper, their ATM, their backup plan, never their daughter, sister, or true part of the family. I'm tired of being the family bank, the unseen support system, and sacrificing my financial and emotional security for people who see me as nothing more than a resource to be used. For the first time in my life, I am putting myself first. My money is my money, my time is my time, and my life is my life, which is extremely freeing. Update 3. It's been a month since my previous update, and I finally accomplished something I never imagined possible. Full tranquility. 2 weeks ago, my family made their final attempt at reconciliation, arriving to my apartment with photo albums and recital programs. The doorman refused to let them in, but they waited in the lobby for hours. We just want to remind her of the good times, Mom told the doorman, flipping through images of my sister's performances and pointing out shots where I might be seen in the background, usually hauling equipment or adjusting costumes. Dad attempted to contact my colleagues via LinkedIn. We're worried about our daughter's mental health, he wrote. She's cutting off her loving family over a simple misunderstanding about shared finances. My coworkers shared his mails to me, along with comments justifying my behavior. My sister's current social media technique has been to play the victim, creating videos about toxic individualism and how money destroys families, while carefully editing out the unauthorized charges and the secret engagement party. However, the comment sections are brimming with folks who have shared the entire narrative. The final straw came when they contacted the Wilsons to make me see reason. Mr. Wilson responded quickly and emphatically. "You've exploited her for years. Leave her alone. I've changed my phone number, shut down my accounts, and even pondered moving to another city. My therapist thinks I'm finally recovering my life, and for the first time in years, I feel liberated." They phoned the Wilsons to help me see reason. Mr. Wilson's response was perfect. "For 30 years, I've seen you treat her as nothing more than a convenience. She is finally appreciating herself as she should have been regarded all along. My lawyer has written formal letters requesting payback of all improper transactions, which totaled over $287,000 over 3 years. They claim everything was agreed upon and that I'm rewriting history. The bank's fraud department disagrees, and investigations are still ongoing. I've moved to a new apartment in a secure building, my mail has been routed through a screening agency, my phone number has changed, my email has rigorous filters, and my social media profiles have been canceled or made private. Last week, I was offered a partnership track position, and the managing partner commented that my management of the family problem demonstrated the kind of backbone they look for in a leader. Without the continual drain of family expectations, I've been able to focus on my profession. Rachel's parents have informally adopted me. I have standing Sunday dinner invitations, and her mother keeps accidentally cooking too much food. They urge that I attend their annual Cape Cod vacation. "Real family vacations don't involve stealing," Rachel's father quipped as we organized the trip. Mrs. Wilson has been helping me rediscover abandoned interests, and I've started taking photography classes, which I couldn't do in high school because it would have clashed with my sister's practice schedule. The Wilsons are still my steady mentors. The extended family is still pushing for reconciliation. But what about the holidays? What happens when your parents are older? These queries used to make me feel guilty. Now they just remind me of how one-sided our relationship was. My therapist pointed out that my family's behavior follows a common pattern of financial abuse, which is veiled by cultural expectations of familial obligation. "You're not breaking family bonds," I was told. "You're breaking free from exploitation." The most significant shift has occurred internally. The worry that used to follow every phone contact, email, and bank alert has vanished. I no longer flinch when my phone calls or feel terrible about spending my own money on myself. Last weekend, I bought an abstract painting that spoke to me, and as I hung it, I realized it was the first time I had bought something solely for myself, rather than for someone else. My sister's most recent post accuses me of being callous for abandoning family. Nevertheless, I have not abandoned family. Rather, I have discovered my true family. It's Rachel's parents asking about my day, and they mean it. It's the Wilsons honoring my accomplishments without expecting anything in return. My coworkers are the ones who never hesitate to defend me. Sometimes I think of that little girl who ironed concert dresses and made dinners to get attention, and I wish I could tell her she deserved more. That being useful is not synonymous with being loved. The real family does not treat you like an ATM. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a support system. I am not a resource to be used. I am free. I skipped the family cruise, and my parents went crazy because they treat me poorly and idolize my brother. I'm not even sure when it began, but I felt like my brother Adam and I belonged to two different households. Perhaps I first became aware of the obvious difference in how we were treated in high school. Adam had been found to be a drug dealer. My parents said it wasn't a huge thing, just a difficult time he was going through. However, after I was found smoking marijuana, it seemed as though I had set the home on fire. My mind was racing as my parents, Richard and Beth, threatened to expel me. My parents would give Adam a blanket and claim he was merely experimenting, but I recognized then that Adam might set the world on fire. Me? They would contact the fire department and I could light a match. This disparity simply widened over time. Adam, frequently referred to as the golden child, left college 3 times. My parents dismissed it as inconsequential each time. He's still finding himself, they would say. In the meantime, they chastised me for not trying hard enough, and I graduated from college a semester late. My achievements never seemed sufficient. I got my first serious work as a technical writer by the time I was 22 in 2020. I was really pleased with myself. However, that moment was short-lived. I was immediately removed from my parents' health insurance. They cut me off entirely as a kind of reward for my independence, proof that I could manage alone. Adam, meanwhile, continued to be covered by their insurance until last year, when he turned 26. I had to stand on my own 2 feet for 4 more years, whether I was ready or not, while still being treated like a child. The imbalance grew unavoidable over time. Adam continued to reside in Colorado, the state where he had left college. My parents paid him money for basics, bills, and rent even though he didn't work or attend school. With this assistance, what did he do? Yes, he purchased a $22,000 dog for himself. I recall listening to my parents rave about Adam's new German Shepherd, Max, as I sat in my tiny apartment making a grocery budget. The worst of it was when I was fired in early 2023 at the age of 24. Due to the company's downsizing, I was no longer able to afford rent. I was forced to return to Oklahoma City, my hometown. My parents made me feel much more like a failure than I already did. I found a new position in May 2023 after months of looking for work. They surprised me by claiming I owed them $10,000 in unpaid rent on the day I happily informed them of my new job. Yes, you read correctly, $10,000. When I moved in, we hadn't even talked about rent. My parents agreed to let me stay till I recovered. I helped out where I could by doing freelance work and contributing to groceries. But all of a sudden, they determined that I owed them for each month that I had been there. I was aware that resisting would just exacerbate the situation. Confrontation was never well received by Beth or Richard. I made the payment. I worked really hard, saved as much money as I could, and paid them off by September 2023, right before I moved in with my lover Tom. The problem with my parents is that, even after Adam depleted their finances for his unsuccessful college attempts, they never asked for anything from him. But me? They were prepared to take advantage of me as soon as I had a steady job. I still hear my mother say, "We're just motivating you to be independent, Sarah." I wanted to yell, I was self-sufficient already. I had been all along. The cruise was the last straw. My parents revealed their ambitious idea for a family trip in late September. They suggested it would be a lovely, week-long Thanksgiving vacation, a cruise. I recall how my mother's face brightened as she talked about how much fun we would have and how wonderful it would be if Adam and his girlfriend Laura could come. "Since you have a good job now, you can buy your own ticket," she added after giving me a quick glance. I was hit hard by the remarks. I was taken aback. "Wait, you're paying for everyone else but not me?" I responded. My mom rehearsed the statement. "Adam's still finding his way. And Laura's family isn't well off. You can afford it, Sarah. It's not like you'd need a fancy room anyway." As if I should be thankful for simply being on the boat, crammed into a windowless cabin like an afterthought, they rationalized, "Not a fancy room." I wish to draw attention to the hypocrisy. Why was Adam receiving a suite if the rooms weren't important? If he was still finding himself at almost 30, why wasn't he paying his own expenses? I, of course, argued. I could afford the ticket, so it wasn't about the money. It has to do with justice. But when it comes to Adam, there is no such thing as fairness in my family. "Green isn't a good look on you, Sarah," my mother replied, shaking her head. "Green? Jealousy? More than anything, I detest that word. They always use it as an excuse, as if my annoyance is unjustified and my emotions are unworthy simply because I don't accept their obvious partiality. That evening, I left their home in a rage. Tom, who has always been there for me, advised me not to go. "You don't owe them this," he stated. I agreed with him for the first time. I decided that I was not going. There was silence in the weeks before Thanksgiving. I always change my mind, so my parents believed I would too. They believe I'm too terrified to upset the status quo and too weak to confront them. I let them believe it this time, though. I didn't let them know I wouldn't be attending. As they confirmed their plans, made hotel reservations, and discussed all of the excursions they would be going on, I remained silent. They didn't text me until the evening before the trip. "Be here by 8 a.m., so we can drive to New Orleans. Don't be late," wrote my dad. With my chest constricted, I gazed at the message. I then replied as follows. "Since you didn't think I was worth the effort to include, I'll be spending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child." I then turned off the group chat. I felt powerful for the first time in years, as like I was choosing myself above their unachievable demands. I accepted the invitation from Tom's family to spend Thanksgiving at their cabin in Arkansas. I owed my parents nothing, not my money, not my time, and definitely not an apology. Tom grinned and gave me a forehead kiss when I informed him about the text. When he said, "Good for you," I wish I could describe how fantastic it felt. It didn't, at least not yet. Even when you know you're right, There's something about confronting your parents that makes you feel uneasy. However, I had had enough of being their afterthought. I had had enough of second place. There was silence in my flat on the morning of the cruise. Like the quiet before a storm, an odd silence descended upon everything. I stared at my muted phone while sipping my coffee. I knew they would begin messaging me shortly to inquire about my whereabouts and to remind me that the car was scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. My dad calling to inquire whether I needed gas money for the drive was something I partially expected. My phone vibrated on the counter at 8:15. As I let it buzz, I saw it glow against the rock like a firefly. Where are you? It's past 8. We're waiting. I saw my mother looking at the clock and shaking her head, and I could almost hear her sigh of impatience. My dad had joined in by 8:30, using his typical direct tone. Sarah, we are leaving for the port in 10 minutes. You need to hurry up. I had been rushing to fulfill their expectations, which weren't the same for Adam, for years. I could see my brother, half sleeping in the back seat of the car, laughing and cheerful. He most likely didn't even realize or give a damn that I wasn't coming. Rubbing his eyes from sleep, Tom entered the kitchen. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, he inquired, "They text you yet?" When I answered, "Of course they did. They'll figure it out soon enough." He gave me the look that indicated, "I know this is difficult, but I'm proud of you." It was too. Despite my desire to feel victorious, I was unable to do so. I felt as though a brick had been placed against my heart. I asked abruptly, "Do you think I'm being petty?" Tom took a seat across from me and spoke in a steady, calm tone. "Sarah, they made this choice. You're just showing them what it feels like to be left out. But they're my parents. I shouldn't." Tom put his elbows on the table and leaned forward. "Your parents treat Adam like he walks on water and act like you're a burden. You've bent over backward for them your whole life. You are not being petty, you're setting a boundary." Despite the fact that my stomach ached, I nodded. Their texts became increasingly desperate as the group chat began to hum once more. At last, I grabbed my phone, typed one message, and pressed send. "Since you didn't put in the effort to include me, I will be attending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child." I then placed the phone face down on the table and muted the conversation. Tom gave a small smile. "You're allowed to put yourself first, Sarah." All I could hope was that it would begin to feel that way. We prepared Tom's vehicle for the trip to his family's cabin that afternoon. Months before, almost as an afterthought, his mother, Linda, had extended an invitation to me. She had called and said, "We'd love to have you join us for Thanksgiving if you're free." I dismissed it at the moment, thinking I would be with my own family. Now it seemed weird, like if the cosmos had known all along. My chest started to relax as we made our way toward the cabin along winding back roads. The naked trees of late November stretched out like bony fingers toward the pale sky as the surrounding area opened up around us. I allowed the silence to envelop me like a blanket as I gazed out the window. After some time, Tom said, "Are you okay?" "I will be," I muttered. I wanted it to be true, but I wasn't sure whether it was. We were warmly received by Tom's family. His mother waved and smiled broadly as soon as we drew into the driveway and came out onto the porch. Like a cozy fire on a chilly night, Linda was one of those people who instantly put you at rest. "I'm so glad you're here, Sarah," she said as she came down the stairs to give me a hug. I returned her hug with a smile. "Thank you for having me." "Of course. We're thrilled to have you join us. Tom, grab her bags and get inside before you both freeze." The aroma of freshly baked pies and roasting turkey filled the cabin like a warm remembrance. While Tom's younger relatives raced around the living room, Tom's father, Paul, was in the kitchen basting the turkey. I couldn't recall the last time I had entered a family get-together and felt accepted and included. With a kind grin, Linda gave me a glass of wine. "Your family here, Sarah. Relax and enjoy yourself." Even though it was the most straightforward thing, I almost started crying. Tom and I got up early the following day, Thanksgiving morning, to assist with the preparations. While she and Paul worked on the food, his mother assigned us to arrange the table. The clatter of dishes, music, and laughter filled the place with vitality. Like a scene from a movie I'd always wanted to be in, it was crazy in the greatest way. I smiled as I watched Tom fold napkins into tidy triangles. "What?" He smiled at me and inquired. "Nothing," I replied. "It's just nice being here." He grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "You deserve this, Sarah." We went outdoors to play cornhole with Tom's cousins after supper. Naturally, I was awful. My aim was as precise as a kid throwing darts while wearing a blindfold. However, no one gave a damn. Tom burst out laughing as I missed the board entirely for the third time. He put an arm around my shoulder and teasingly said, "You're hopeless." "I'm trying my best," I answered, sharing his laughter. From across the yard, his cousin Ellie, who couldn't have been older than 12, spoke up. "You're doing great, Sarah. My mom says it's about having fun, not winning." I grinned. "I'll take it." We gathered around the fire pit that night, drinking hot cocoa while covered in blankets. Linda distributed marshmallows to be roasted. I felt calmer than I have in years as I watched the flames dance before me. I was treated like a member of Tom's family. No one made me feel alienated or asked me where I belonged. I didn't feel the need to prove myself to anyone for once. Linda smiled softly at me as we sat gazing at the flickering embers toward the end of the night. "Sarah, I know this is ultimately up to Tom, but I hope you'll join our family for real someday." I was taken aback by what she said, and my cheeks began to blush. I muttered, "I would be honored." Then, I meant it too. I felt lighter than I had in a long time as I laid in bed with Tom that night and looked up at the ceiling. Whispering, "Thank you for bringing me here." Tom turned over on his side and gave me a look. "You're welcome. But you don't have to thank me, Sarah. You belong here." His words sank in like rain after a drought, and I blinked back tears. This was where I belonged. I didn't have to plead for morsels of affection or struggle for a seat at the table. As I was sufficient. I felt free for the first time in my life. The Saturday following Thanksgiving, I felt lighter than I had in months when I woke up. With laughter, food, warmth, and no expectations other than simply being there, Tom's family made things seem so easy. You don't have to earn that kind of love, and I didn't understand how hungry I was for it. It was a quiet drive back to Dallas. As we discussed everything and nothing, including our plans for Christmas, future hikes, and how awful I was at cornhole, the trees outside became hazy striations of brown and yellow. Over the course of those few hours, I laughed more than I had all year. However, such lightness was short-lived. I finally picked up my phone when we returned to my place. I nearly felt bad about turning it back on after not checking it all weekend. With dozens of unread messages, pictures, and even a few missed calls, the group chat had blown up. As the screen filled with notifications, I gazed at it. There were photos from the cruise. One of my parents, smiling and sunburned, drinking, another of Adam and Laura on the ship's deck, with the ocean behind them like an infinite blue dream. Then the texts arrived. "Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places." In those remarks, I could practically hear my dad's voice, composed, measured, and tinged with a hint of judgment. He never used the exact words, but it was the kind of message that made me feel bad. As I continued to scroll, I came across a text from my mother. "You should have been there. I hope you realize what you missed out on." What did I miss? I pondered. But what did they miss? What about how they treated me as though I wasn't important enough to start with? I read the text again and again while sitting on the edge of the couch, my cheeks flushed. Tom saw right away. He put his arm around my shoulders and sat down next to me. What did they say? To let him see, I held out the phone. Silently. "Same old story," I muttered. I should feel bad for missing out, not the other way around. Tom let out a sigh. "You don't have to justify your choices to them, Sarah." I answered. "I know, but I didn't feel like I knew anything." My mom's name appeared on my phone a few minutes later. A tiny part of me that still yearned for their acceptance picked up the phone when I considered ignoring it. She said, "Where were you?" right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. "I told you," I said, attempting to sound steady. "I spent the holiday with Tom's family." "You could have told us sooner, Sarah," she replied. "Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up?" I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. "Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket. You didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan." She became defensive in tone. "We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help." Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. "And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful." She yelled. "That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent. You don't understand how hard it is for him." She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, "I'm independent because you never gave me a choice." She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, "I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. I guess I'll just leave you alone, I replied. Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. With my entire body trembling, I buried my face in my hands. Immediately, Tom was there, sitting beside me and embracing me. It's okay, he muttered. You're okay. However, I didn't feel well. No matter how many times Tom assured me that I was sufficient, I knew that my parents would never be able to fill the void in my heart. Tom and I shared a pint of ice cream on the couch for the remainder of the evening. In an attempt to escape the weight of it all, we watched old films. Even though the tears were still threatening to come back, I allowed myself to laugh when Tom cited the corny dialogue. I felt empty by the time I went to bed. I got up early for work the following morning. There was silence on my phone. Don't text. No calls were missed. In some ways, my parents' silence was worse than their rage. They seemed to be waiting for me to say I was sorry and that I had overreacted, as I often had in the past. But I wasn't going to this time. I immersed myself in my job, utilizing the diversion to prevent myself from reflecting on everything that had transpired. I sent emails, revised technical manuals, and acted as if nothing was wrong. When my coworkers inquired about my Thanksgiving, I consistently responded with the same response. It was nice, I spent it with Tom's family. I kept the argument with my parents a secret from them. I kept the pictures, the texts, and the phone call that left me sobbing on the couch a secret from them. In actuality, I was ashamed. Shame that after everything they had done to me, I still desperately craved their acceptance. Tom and I sat on my apartment's balcony that evening and watched the distant blinking city lights. At last, I said, I don't know why it's so hard. Because they're your parents, Tom said. You want them to love you the way you deserve. That's not a bad thing, Sarah. I muttered. But what if they never will? After a period of silence, Tom said, then maybe you have to stop asking for it. I knew he was right, so his comments were like a kick to the belly. I had begged for something my parents couldn't provide me with all my life. Perhaps it was time to give up. However, I wasn't yet prepared. My mother texted me when I woke up the following morning. We need to talk before Christmas. Let us know when you're free. I placed my phone down after staring at the message for a while. Christmas. That meant something to me. They didn't want the rest of the family to know why I wasn't there. They would want me to act like nothing had occurred, play nice, and smile for photos. However, I wasn't sure if I could still do it. I didn't anticipate how much the weeks before Christmas would weigh on me. Like a burden I couldn't release, my mom's text about having to talk hung in the back of my mind. At first, I thought they would just disregard it. However, I was acquainted with my parents. They weren't the type to tolerate unresolved conflict, particularly if it meant looking foolish in front of the other family members. I still hadn't responded by the middle of December, and the messages began to come in once more. My dad joined in this time. We can't just leave things like this, Sarah. Family means something. Let us know when we can talk. Family means something. I sat with those words for a long time, mentally reciting them over and over again. How did they define family? She said, where were you? Right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. I told you, I said, attempting to sound steady. I spent the holiday with Tom's family. You could have told us sooner, Sarah, she replied. Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up? I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket. You didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan. She became defensive in tone. We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help. Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful. She yelled. That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent, you don't understand how hard it is for him. She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, I'm independent because you never gave me a choice. She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. "I guess I'll just leave you alone," I replied. "Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway." Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. Tom discovered me sitting at the table with my head in my hands in the kitchen that evening. I had been mentally going over the exchange with my mother over and again, analyzing each word, tone, and pause. Tom gently pulled out a chair to sit across from me and asked, "What happened?" "They want me to come for Christmas," I replied. She didn't apologize though, not really. It's like they don't even understand what they've done. With a groan, Tom reached for my hand. "Do you want to go?" I gave a headshake. "I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to, it's Christmas. I don't want to lose my whole family, but it hurts to keep pretending nothing's wrong," he concluded for me. "Yeah," I muttered. Tom gave me a handshake. "Then don't go, Sarah. You don't have to keep putting yourself in situations that hurt you." "But if I don't go, they'll tell everyone I'm being selfish," I replied. "They'll make it sound like I'm the problem. My mom knows how to twist things so it looks like I'm the bad guy." Tom remained silent for a while, as if he was attempting to find the proper words. Then he stated, "It doesn't matter what they tell other people. You know the truth." I could feel the pressure building as Christmas drew near. My mother contacted me twice more and left identical-sounding voicemails. She desired to make things more amicable. She desired the family's unity. She wished for me to let go of the past. I didn't return her call. My dad eventually sent a message the day before Christmas Eve. "This has gone on long enough, Sarah. You're coming to Christmas. We'll talk it out like adults, and then we'll move forward." It was an order, not a request. Before I erased the message, I looked at it for a while. Tom and I packed the car and headed back to his parents' property on Christmas Day. As if she had been waiting for us all morning, Linda welcomed us with a platter of cookies and a loving embrace. Squeezing my arm, she added, "I'm so glad you're here." I grinned, but my eyes didn't see it. I knew my parents would spend the day acting like everything was fine, but the truth was that I felt bad, guilty for not being with them. I pictured them at the dinner table, with my mom passing around the mashed potatoes and Adam giggling at something. I pondered whether they would inform everyone that I was too busy to go or that I was simply being challenging once more. I must have been deep in thought when Tom bent over and said in a whisper, "Hey, you don't have to feel bad about choosing yourself." "I know," I muttered. His family and I sat by the fire that afternoon and opened gifts. Tom's father gave me a mug that read, "You're part of the family, whether you like it or not." And Linda gave me a knitted scarf that was the softest thing I had ever felt. I almost started crying, but everyone laughed. I now understood what Christmas could be like for the first time in my life: cozy, stress-free, and effortless. No one was being cautious. No one was keeping score. It was love, pure and unreserved. I grinned as I turned to face Tom. Perhaps this was how family was meant to feel. For once, I didn't feel like I was stepping on a minefield as Christmas went by in silence. There were no harsh words, tight smiles, or passive-aggressive remarks to spoil the occasion, and Tom's family made the holiday feel effortless. After holding my breath for too long, I felt calm when I woke up the following morning, as though I had finally figured out what it meant to release it. However, that tranquility was short-lived. After 2 days, I turned my phone back on and discovered just what I had anticipated. Texts, voicemails, and missed calls. My absence had not gone overlooked, and my family had spent the holiday together. Late on Christmas night, my mother sent a message. "We missed you today, Sarah. Your absence really hurt your father." That was it. There were no explanations, no attempt to find out why I had avoided them, and no expression of regret for how they had made me feel so inferior. Rather, the responsibility had returned to me. The issue was me. They had been harmed by me. My parents seemed to live in a whole separate reality, where my emotions were non-existent unless they caused annoyance to another else. The shame hung like smoke in the back of my mind, but I chose to disregard the message and resume my life. A part of me knew that the decision I had taken was the right one. Why, though, did everything still feel so off? A few days later, Tom and I were watching a movie when my phone called. It was Adam, my brother. I hesitated when I saw his name on the screen. Adam didn't call me very much. He preferred to keep his hands clean and avoided getting involved in any arguments with our parents most of the time. Quietly, I asked Tom, "Should I answer it?" His words, "It's up to you," came as he squeezed my hand. After a moment of hesitation, I swiped the screen. Hello? Sarah, Adam remarked in a cool, clipped voice. What the hell happened? I let out a sigh. What do you mean? I mean Christmas, he continued, his voice beginning to grow irritated. Mom and Dad were a wreck. They said you just ignored them and ruined the holiday. I saw my jaw getting tense. I didn't ruin anything, Adam. I chose not to come because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter. Adam exhaled heavily, the way he always did when he felt I was being tough. Why do you have to make everything a big deal, Sarah? They're trying their best? No, they're not, I remarked sharply. Adam, they treat you like you're perfect. They pay for everything you need and never expect you to stand on your own. Meanwhile, I get $10,000 in rent thrown at me the second I get a new job. Do you not see how unfair that is? Adam's comments, you're just jealous, were as recognizable as an old scar. You always have been. Again, that word. Jealous. As if my desire for justice made me the bad guy. With my voice trembling, I tightened my hold on the phone. I'm not jealous, Adam. I'm exhausted. You get to make mistakes and get help. I don't. I have to be perfect just to earn the bare minimum, and I'm tired of it. Maybe if you stopped acting like a victim, they'd treat you differently. Adam replied bluntly. I thought he had slapped me. I was momentarily unable to even reply. That one sentence seemed to crush every shred of hope I had ever had for my brother. He was unable to comprehend. He didn't. I was the issue for him. It was me who created the commotion. At that moment, I understood that I had been mistaken to believe that Adam may one day see things for what they truly were. I replied softly, "Goodbye, Adam," and hung up before he could answer. I hid my face in my hands and placed the phone on the table. Even though I didn't want to cry, I did. Without a word, Tom grabbed me into his arms and let me express everything. He doesn't get it, I muttered after some time. He never will. I know, Tom said. But that's not your fault, Sarah. I couldn't stop thinking about that phone talk with Adam in the days that followed. I repeatedly rehearsed his remarks in my mind in the hopes that they might lessen the pain. However, they didn't. I reflected on how close we had been as children. Adam was my hero back then. He stayed up late playing video games with me and taught me how to ride a bike. When I was being teased at school, he was the one who defended me. I had believed that Adam was the only one who truly understood me. However, things had changed at some point. Adam had been more than glad to take the perks my parents gave him without question, and their partiality had caused a rift between us. I wanted to think he still secretly cared for me. In actuality, though, he had sided with them. Perhaps he didn't think so. Perhaps he believed he was merely maintaining harmony. However, it seemed like a betrayal to me. Although I wasn't convinced that version of my brother still existed, I still missed him. Tom and I observed the city lights one evening while sitting on the balcony, covered with blankets. After a hard day, the crisp but chilly air felt rejuvenating, like a reset button. I've been thinking, I muttered. About what? Tom asked me as he turned to face me. About cutting contact with them, I replied. Speaking the words aloud felt liberating, but they also felt heavy. I mean, not completely. Not yet. But maybe I need to put some real distance between us. I need a break from all of this. Tom gave a nod. You don't have to explain it to me, Sarah, I think it's the right move. The words, I feel guilty, I said. They're still my family. And if I walk away, they'll tell everyone I'm the problem. I don't want to lose the rest of my family too. Tom grabbed my hand as he reached over. Sarah, you can't control what they say about you. You can't change the way they see things. But you don't deserve to keep putting yourself through this just to make them happy. I took a deep breath while gazing at the skyline. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it. You are, Tom asserted decisively. You've been strong your whole life, Sarah. But this time, you're being strong for yourself. That's different. I listened to what he had to say. Perhaps he was correct. I had spent years trying to prove myself to my parents and going out of my way to get their love and acceptance. But it was never enough, no matter how hard I tried. Perhaps it was time to give up. Perhaps I should have chosen myself instead. I took a seat that evening and composed a letter to my parents. Mom, Dad, for a while, I need some space. I love you both, but I can't keep acting like everything is all right when it's not. I'm sick of being compared to Adam and feeling unimportant. I need time to decide what kind of relationship I want with you, so I need to take a break until then. I hope you understand. Before I pushed submit, I looked at the message for a long time. I experienced a peculiar sensation of relief when I eventually did, as if I had finally let go of something I had been clinging to for too long. With his hand on my knee, Tom sat next to me. "How do you feel?" "Scared," was my honest response. "But also, lighter." He smiled as he remarked, "That's a good start." And I believed him for the first time in years. My wife forgot our anniversary, so I didn't pick her up at the airport. Am I the asshole for not forgiving her despite her later apology? My wife forgot our anniversary, so I decided not to pick her up at the airport. I am a 23-year-old male married to Sarah, 25. We've been together for 5 years, and I'm reaching a breaking point. Let me set the stage. It's our 5th wedding anniversary. You'd think that after 5 years of marriage, some recognition of the milestone would be expected, right? I had been dropping hints for weeks, saying things like, "I can't believe we've been married for 5 years," or, "Do you think we'll do anything special for our anniversary this year?" She responded distractedly, as I expected given her hectic schedule. Then the day arrived, and everything went as usual. She didn't say anything. There were no flowers, no meal, and no mention of our anniversary. I mean, I had gone all out every year before, organizing surprise dinners, writing meaningful messages, and sending thoughtful gifts. But over the past few years, it seemed like I was the only one making an attempt. So I brought it up. I said something like, "Hey, I suppose we aren't celebrating today?" She just laughed it off, saying, "Oh, we'll do something later. Don't worry." But later never arrived. The day went without her realizing it. I felt hurt and irritated. I've put so much into this marriage, and now here I am, feeling forgotten on our anniversary. Then things began to spiral. She had a business trip arranged for the same week, departing on the 14th and returning the following evening. She asked me to bring her up from the airport, as usual. At first, I hesitated. I had been giving passive-aggressive indications about my feelings, but she didn't appear to notice. Instead, she kept making jokes about how weary she was from the trip and how excited she was to be home, without mentioning the anniversary. It was all about work, and everything seemed okay. Frustration built up. I had been doing all the emotional work, making every special occasion memorable, while she was constantly distracted or preoccupied. That night, after lying awake for several hours, I made a decision. I was not going to pick her up at the airport. I wasn't about to reward her contempt for me. Maybe if I stopped being so accommodating, she'd realize how much she took me for granted. I did not text her, call her, or do anything. When she gave me the normal message with her flight information, time, gate, and ETA, I didn't answer. I did not even acknowledge it. It felt empowering to simply not care, even if only for a moment. I spent the day doing my own thing, treating myself as I deserved, with no regard for Sarah's flight or her return. Around 8 p.m., I began receiving texts from her, one after the other. She started phoning over and over. I simply ignored it. A part of me felt bad, but the majority of me felt strangely satisfied. Sarah was stranded at the airport with no one to pick her up, and I wasn't going to be the dutiful husband anymore. She could figure things out. Finally, about an hour later, after ignoring her calls for what seemed like an eternity, I texted her. "Oh, sorry. I completely forgot you needed a ride. This happens from time to time. I confess it was a touch petty, and I'm not proud of it. But, after 5 years of always putting her needs first, I finally broke." The remarks were almost too sweet, full of irony. I knew it would enrage her, and that's exactly what occurred. The next text I received was a series of heated rants, calling me selfish and reckless. She went on about how I was overreacting and being childish. I didn't care. The following several hours were a haze. She eventually found her way home, and as she came through the door, there was a chill in the air. She scarcely acknowledged me. She was still angry and sulking, and I didn't care anymore. I went to bed early that night and left her to her thoughts. The following day was no better. Sarah did not even apologize. She made the same old excuse about work being stressful, claiming she had just lost track of things. But I wouldn't have it. I wasn't going to let her brush everything under the rug anymore. I wanted her to admit she had messed up. I wanted her to understand what she'd done. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the sense that nothing would change. So I let her be angry. And me? I felt an odd combination of remorse and delight. I have no idea where this will lead, but I know I can't go back to the way things were. Something has to give. Update number 1. After I texted Sarah about forgetting to take her up, I didn't hear from her for a while. But, oh, when I did, it was not pretty. She started texting and calling repeatedly. I ignored each one. Part of me wanted to just let her stew, But I kept my phone on silent, and hours passed. I wasn't going to rush to pick up the pieces because she was the one who had ignored me for so long. It wasn't until after 10 p.m., I eventually surrendered and checked my phone. I had missed perhaps 15 calls and at least 20 texts. Most of them consisted of her calling me petty, reckless, and juvenile. She was infuriated. The most memorable text was one that read, "You really had to leave me stranded? Is this how you treat me after all I've done for you?" I wasn't going to fall into that guilt trip. Instead, I said quietly, "Maybe now you know what it feels like to be forgotten." I didn't say anything else. I knew any additional explanation would be lost on her. Sarah attempted to defend herself as best she could. Her response was classic. "I apologize, okay? But I've been occupied with work. I did not mean to forget the anniversary. You know how hectic things have been recently." It was the usual excuse she had always used. Job stress. But this time, it wasn't going to work. I did not respond right away. I just let the silence linger between us. After a while, she got the hint. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized how deeply she'd been affected by the entire affair. Sarah waited at the airport for more than 3 hours. Apparently, she tried to phone me every half hour throughout that time. She couldn't catch a cab soon away because she didn't want to spend money on it. She eventually gave up and hired a cab, but by the time she arrived home, it was already past midnight. When she came through the door, I didn't welcome her or make small conversation. She did not even look at me. She simply went past me, dropping her suitcase on the floor. It was obvious that she was still irritated. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She tried to talk, but it was more of a monologue about how unfair I was. "I worked hard, and this is how you treated me?" she inquired, her voice filled with frustration. But the excuses were no longer effective for me. I wasn't interested in hearing about how difficult her job was when I felt like I'd been carrying this relationship alone for months. The first night back was horrible. We did not converse much. The only time she looked at me was while I was preparing for bed. I could feel her stare at me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I was not going to make the first move. The next day, Sarah tried to make things right by texting me and stating, "I've been working so hard lately, it simply slipped my mind." You know how it goes. Same old narrative, same lame excuse. At this point, it was clear she didn't get it. We scarcely communicated for the following 2 days. Every time we did it, she seemed to be walking on eggshells. She was passive-aggressive, and I was not about to back down either. I had made my point, and I was not going to let her convince me that everything was all right just because she offered a few meaningless apologies. It didn't help that her father became involved. He called to ask why Sarah had to take a cab home. He was concerned, of course, but it seemed like he was trying to guilt-trip me. "I can't believe you left her there," he said. "She's been working so hard, and you just let her figure it out on her own." I had no idea how to answer, so I didn't. I let the call finish and walked away. Later that evening, Sarah made an effort to apologize, but it was not real. It felt forced, as if she was saying sorry simply to relieve the tension. "I guess I could have done better, but you didn't have to leave me stranded," she replied. There was no true accountability, no understanding of why I was furious in the first place, only another deflection. I wasn't going to accept a half-hearted apology. I told her, "I'll get past this if you can acknowledge how I feel and start being more considerate. It's not only about the anniversary. It's about how you treat me overall." How did she respond? She accused me of overreacting. She claimed I was overreacting to the situation, but I refused to back down. After a few more days of stillness and tension, I decided to establish some boundaries. I wanted space to focus on myself, so I resumed my own activities. It was a comfort not to have to continuously attend to her moods. Sarah wasn't delighted with this, but she made one more effort to make things right. She made a dinner reservation for the two of us, stating it was to compensate for something. I wasn't sure if she truly believed it would heal things or if it was a last-ditch effort to escape true responsibilities. Regardless, I wasn't sure if it was enough. I was still waiting to see if she was truly going to change. Is this a serious attempt, or just another temporary fix that will come apart in a few weeks? Update number 2. Following the airport incident, Sarah determined to attempt to set things right. She made a dinner reservation at a restaurant, claiming it was to make amends for everything that had occurred. I won't lie, part of me was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this was the moment she realized how much she had hurt me and decided to make an effort. But, as usual, this was not the case. Sarah texted me at midday on the day of the dinner to inform me that the reservation had been made for 7 p.m. I didn't sense any enthusiasm, I was simply going through the motions. Perhaps it was the fact that this wasn't our first attempt to settle things, or it was the nagging feeling in my gut that this supper would make no difference. Still, I got ready and decided to give it a shot. At least for one night, everything might be different. We got at the restaurant, and to my surprise, it wasn't as nice and private as I had imagined. Instead, it was a basic chain restaurant, the kind you go to for casual evenings when you don't want to put in too much effort. It wasn't even a place I enjoyed. I'd previously stated that I didn't like such types of places, but Sarah had chosen them regardless. I tried not to let it affect me, but it was difficult to ignore the lack of effort. It felt like she had chosen the easiest option, as if she couldn't be bothered to think about what I would want. The conversation began awkwardly. Sarah immediately began discussing how hard her job had been, going on and on about deadlines, meetings, and the amount of strain she was under. She didn't even recognize that she had missed our anniversary or left me stranded in the airport. Instead, she simply kept chatting about work. She said something about doing her best and being stressed out, but I couldn't help but think she was entirely missing the point. She had not apologized for the anniversary. She had not apologized for making me feel totally invisible. The more she discussed work, the more frustrated I felt. It wasn't simply that she was disregarding the larger issue. She didn't appear to comprehend how deeply her actions had hurt me. And it struck me harder than ever. In that moment, I recognized that this was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern. We were sitting there trying to have a great supper, but all I could think about was how disconnected she was from what was truly important. She didn't seem to get why I was wounded. It wasn't only about the anniversary. It was not only about the airport. It was about all the tiny things she had overlooked over the years, like the birthday surprises I arranged alone. She was too busy during the holidays, so we spent them apart. Our small conversation didn't last long, and things began to unravel. We had a minor quarrel about the food, but as often, it escalated into something more. She became defensive, arguing that I was being very picky and ungrateful. I attempted to clarify that it was not about the meal or the restaurant, but about everything else. That's when everything started to spill out. I told her how I felt ignored, and how she never seemed to put any effort into our relationship. I mentioned the anniversaries, birthdays, and quiet nights where I felt like a supporting figure in her life. Sarah, however, deflected rather than accepting responsibility. She began talking about how nobody's perfect, and how I should simply accept what I had. And there it was, the excuse I'd grown tired of hearing. Nobody's perfect. It was the mantra she usually said when things got tough, and this time was no exception. When the waiter came by to see if we needed anything else, I simply stared at Sarah. Her countenance was blank, and it was evident she was no longer listening. She made a token effort, offering me a small box of chocolates with a half-hearted smile. "Here," she answered. "This is for you. Sorry for everything. It was a lovely gesture, I suppose, but it felt insincere. A last-ditch effort to make things right without actually addressing the larger issues between us." I did not even want the chocolates. I was past the point of making little gestures. I needed something authentic. The remainder of the dinner was quiet, unpleasant, and full of meaningless platitudes. We scarcely chatted on the way home. I felt the strain in the car. Sarah was still unhappy, but I couldn't tell if she was upset with me for calling her out or with herself for not understanding why I was upset in the first place. It did not matter. Regardless, the silence was deafening. When we returned home, I couldn't shake the impression that nothing had changed. I thought that this time she'd understand. That it wasn't about the little things, but about the broader picture. But my hopes were dashed when I looked at her and realized she still didn't see it. Sarah began completing minor household chores over the next 3 days. She washed the dishes, helped with the laundry, and cleaned up. At first, I assumed this was a sign that she was attempting to change. However, it felt more like damage control than anything else. She wasn't doing these things because she truly wanted to. She was doing them because she knew I was furious and wanted to avoid a confrontation. I noticed myself emotionally distancing more and more. I couldn't help it. I did not want to keep being disappointed. I didn't want to keep waiting for her to change when it appeared she wasn't trying. I didn't want to fix someone who refused to meet me halfway. A friend of mine advised I provide Sarah an ultimatum. "Either she changes, or you walk away," he replied. It seems harsh, but perhaps it was the wake-up call she needed. I couldn't keep on like this, always wondering if she was going to make a genuine effort. Sarah's excuses piled up over time: work stress, deadlines. They were always her explanations for everything. I was beginning to notice a larger problem. Sarah didn't seem to realize the developing emotional distance between us. She assumed that performing the bare minimum would suffice, but I realized that wasn't the case anymore. I began to ponder about our future together. Was this relationship salvageable? I had no idea anymore. Update 3. After weeks of dealing with the same cycle, empty apologies, half-hearted attempts at change, and more excuses, I had reached my breaking point. I could not go on like this any longer. I had tried to be patient and give her opportunities to step up, but it was evident that Sarah didn't grasp it. So I decided to sit down with her and have the chat we should have had months ago. It was not easy. I'd been putting it off, hoping she'd figure it out on her own, but that wasn't happening. When she returned home from work one evening, I informed her that we needed to discuss. There was no way around this one. We sat in the living room, and I could immediately feel the tension rising. I didn't want to yell, but I couldn't hide my feelings any longer. I began by telling Sarah, I can't do this anymore. This relationship has been one-sided for far too long. You've disregarded me, forgotten critical events, and never accepted responsibility for any of it. She only glanced at me, bewildered. What are you talking about? She asked. I've been working so hard, and you're acting like I'm doing nothing. I took a deep breath and tried to remain cool. It is not about your work, Sarah. It's about how you treated me. The anniversary. The airport incident. I've tried to make this relationship work for both of us, but you haven't even attempted to meet me halfway. Sarah instantly went on the defensive, as she usually does. You're blowing things out of proportion, she continued, her voice rising. You're acting like I forgot your anniversary on purpose. I didn't mean to forget, okay? I've been stressed out with work. Sarah responded with defiance. I was not buying it. It isn't only the anniversary, Sarah. It is everything. It's every time you make me feel unimportant. Every birthday and holiday passes, and I'm the only one who makes an attempt. Sarah's face stiffened. I am not perfect, okay? Nobody is perfect. Maybe you're just too demanding. I do what I can. She placed the responsibility back on me. Perhaps you expect too much of me. Her statement made me even enraged. I am not looking for perfection, Sarah. I am asking for basic consideration. I am seeking for respect. I'm asking you to care about our relationship in the same way that I do. But you don't, and that's what really hurts. The room fell silent for a minute. I could see Sarah wasn't expecting this type of discourse. She squirmed uneasily in her seat, obviously unsure how to answer. I guess I could have done better, she said, but it was clear she didn't truly believe it. She didn't really accept responsibility for anything. She wasn't even apologetic. She was simply stating what she needed to say. I'm not interested in hearing you say you could have done better, I stated calmly. I need more than that. I need to know you understand it. I need to know you understand how much your negligence has harmed me, and I need you to demonstrate that you are prepared to make an attempt. Sarah avoided staring at me. I could tell she was uncomfortable, but I was not done. I had one final point to make. How would you feel if the roles were reversed, Sarah? How would you feel if I forgot about our anniversary and left you at the airport? For the first time in the conversation, she was silent. Her mouth opened, but no words emerged. I could see the wheels moving in her thoughts, and for a brief time, it appeared that the truth had finally been accepted. She didn't say anything for quite some time, and I let the stillness hang in the air. Finally, Sarah broke the pause with a low, I'm not sure. I suppose I'd be pissed. I nodded. Exactly. That is how I feel. That is how I have felt for a long time. I proposed something simple. Couples activities such as frequent date nights or simply spending time together to restore the connection we once had. I wanted to see if she was truly willing to put up the effort to alter things. We can try it, but it will require work from both of us. I can't keep carrying this relationship by myself, I admitted. Sarah stared at me and hesitated for a second. Okay, I'll try, she answered, but her tone was flat, as if she was simply repeating what she thought I wanted to hear. I'm not sure whether date nights will solve anything, but I'll try. That was the lackluster response I expected. It felt more like a responsibility than a commitment. I knew I had to wait a few weeks to see whether anything would change. I couldn't simply accept her word for it. The conversation concluded on a tense note. Sarah did not appear convinced, and neither did I. We went to bed without saying anything more, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept wondering if Sarah's statements were sincere or if she was just saying anything to get me off her back. I chose to give it time, but I knew I couldn't wait forever. I had already invested so much in this relationship, and I wasn't sure how much more I could offer if nothing changed. I couldn't let myself become trapped in a cycle of disappointment and broken promises. So now I'm simply waiting to see if Sarah will make an attempt or if she'll revert to her old habits. I'm not sure what will happen, But I do know one thing. I'm not going to stick around for another false promise. Update 4. After that serious chat, things appeared to take a turn. For a time. Sarah tried harder. She actually organized a small date night for us, which included dinner at a local restaurant we both enjoyed. Nothing extravagant, but it did feel like an effort. She also began to assist around the house more, cleaning dishes without being asked, bringing out the garbage, and picking up groceries. Things appeared to be improving for about a week. I even began to wonder whether she was finally getting it. Maybe I was wrong about her. But during the second week, things began to return to normal. Sarah canceled a planned outing, claiming that work had piled up and she couldn't get away. Again, work stress was her go-to excuse. I tried to be understanding, but it was difficult not to perceive it as yet another meaningless excuse. I was frustrated. I had hoped that her efforts in the first week were meaningful, but they suddenly felt like a temporary fix. Something she did only to keep me quiet. The saddest thing was when Sarah forgot another milestone. She didn't recall the day we first met. It wasn't something big, just a minor detail that mattered to me. I mentioned it lightly, but she just shrugged it off as if it were no great deal. In that instant, I knew she was no longer trying to keep track of these things. She didn't care about the small things that used to matter to both of us. It was only me, attempting to hang on to whatever spark we had left, while she appeared to be losing interest. I began doubting everything. Did Sarah genuinely care about our marriage, or did she simply assume that I would always be there? She didn't appear to realize how much effort I was putting in, which hurt more than I'd want to admit. I wasn't sure if she still respected me or just took me for granted. One day, while cleaning up the living room, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. I found Sarah's calendar stashed beneath some papers on her desk. I don't typically rummage through her belongings, but something told me to look. I noticed the date of our anniversary marked on the calendar. But here's the thing, she still forgot it. It was as if she had prepared for it, made a note of it, but then forgot about it when it finally arrived. I was quite frustrated. Later that night, I confronted her, wondering why she had marked our anniversary yet still forgot about it. She made some poor excuse about forgetting to check her calendar that week. That is what she said, as if it were an innocent mistake. It was not a mistake. It was plain negligence. When I looked at the calendar more thoroughly, I realized what had actually been prioritized. There were work obligations, sporting events, and weekend vacations with pals, but almost nothing about us. Our relationship seemed to have slipped under her notice. I had understood that work was always her top priority, but seeing it set out like that stung me harder than intended. I had tried so hard to keep things going between us, but it seemed like she couldn't be bothered. The final straw arrived a few days later. I overheard Sarah on the phone with a friend, discussing a weekend trip they were arranging for a sporting event. She was ecstatic about it, discussing the trip's specifics as if it were the greatest thing ever. I felt terrible to my stomach. This was something she had not revealed to me. She had time for a weekend excursion with her pals, but she couldn't remember even the smallest details about me. I tried to dismiss it at first, but the more I considered it, the more betrayed I felt. It wasn't simply that she prioritized her hobbies, she never thought about how I'd feel. She had plenty of time and energy for everything else, but when it came to us, I felt like an afterthought. So I stopped engaging. I stopped making an attempt. I stopped texting her throughout the day and trying to make small chat when she arrived home. I felt if she didn't notice the distance between us, she probably never would. I needed her to see what was going on. I needed her to feel how I was feeling. Eventually, our pals noticed. They were initially all on Sarah's side, claiming that I was overreacting. But eventually, they noticed it as well. Several friends contacted me, stating they understood my unhappiness and even confessed Sarah had been selfish. They told me I deserved better, and I understood I wasn't alone in seeing the reality. But nothing changed. The final blow came when Sarah canceled our scheduled dinner date to attend a last-minute gathering with her pals. She didn't even tell me in person. She sent me an apology, stating she couldn't refuse the invitation. That was it. That was when I understood I needed to make a decision. This was something I couldn't keep putting off. Sarah wouldn't change unless I forced her to. I could wait for her to figure it out, but at what cost? The longer I stayed, the more I felt like I had lost myself. I needed to stop waiting for a relationship that was unsatisfactory. Now I'm at a crossroads. I'm not sure if I have the strength to walk away, but I can't keep continuing like this. The emotional barrier has grown so far that I'm not sure how to bridge it anymore. Something needs to give. It's time for me to make a difficult decision about my marriage, one that will either force her to wake up or allow me the space I require to move on. Update 5. After everything that had happened, I felt it was time to take a step back and consider what I really wanted. I needed to decide if I wanted to keep trying in this relationship or if it was time to walk away for forever. So I chose to spend the entire weekend alone. I did not respond to Sarah's SMS or calls. I didn't even leave the house often. I needed room to think, and this time I wasn't going to allow my emotions influence my decision. During that weekend, I finally realized the reality. I had been settling for less than I deserved for quite some time. I recognized how emotionally spent I had gotten by clinging to something that no longer existed. The small things I did for Sarah, the gestures, the effort, all seemed to go unappreciated. She wasn't making an effort to make me feel respected. She was not even trying. And the worst part? Sarah didn't seem to notice anything wrong. She simply went about her normal routine, figuring everything was great. That understanding ached. I spent the entire weekend reflecting on how much I gave to this relationship and how little I received in return. I was no longer upset about the anniversary or the airport event. I was concerned about the big picture. Sarah had never really cared about putting me first. She had never seen me as a priority. When I came out of my weekend of reflection, I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I was emotionally weary, and if I stayed in this relationship, I would only continue to be harmed. So I arranged one last conversation with Sarah. This was it. I was going to lay it all out and set clear boundaries for what I needed if this relationship was going to survive. I decided to wait until the following weekend to have the chat. Sarah was going to be home, and I knew it was our last chance to actually talk. I was prepared to be direct. To tell her everything I had been keeping hidden for so long. When the time arrived, I sat with Sarah in the living room. She could see something was wrong, but I don't think she expected what happened. I began by telling her that I couldn't continue in a relationship in which I felt underappreciated. I've tried to connect with you, I explained, but nothing has changed. You're always too busy, and I'm constantly making excuses for you. I can't do it anymore. Sarah appeared shocked. She couldn't believe what I was saying. She continued asking, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I didn't realize things were so horrible. It was as if she was taken aback by anything I said, but I found it difficult to feel sorry for her. How could she not have realized it? How could she not notice the impact her negligence was having on me? She instantly transferred the blame back onto me, saying, "You should have told me how you felt." I didn't realize things were this horrible. I thought everything was fine, she explained. She made it appear as if it was my fault for not being more outspoken about how miserable I was. That's when I realized she was completely out of touch with the state of our relationship. "I've tried, Sarah," I answered, trying to remain cool. "I've tried to connect with you multiple times, but you never listen. You do not take my problems seriously, and I have been left feeling alone. I can't continue doing this." Sarah did not take it well. She asked me for another opportunity. "I will change, I swear. I will put forth more effort. I will prioritize you. Please don't leave me." Her voice was imploring now, and her eyes were filled with desperation. For a brief moment, I considered backing down, but I knew I couldn't just let her keep making bogus promises. She had been doing so for years. "I'm willing to give it one last try," I told you. "But this time, things have to be different. I need you to actually show me that you can change. No more excuses. No more empty apologies." Sarah agreed, but I was not convinced. Her words were only that, words. Actions spoke louder, and I wanted to see if she would follow through on anything she said. We discussed specific things she could do to make time for us, organize more thoughtful dates, and be present while we were together. It was a modest list, but it was the beginning. The following few days saw a variety of tiny but obvious changes. Sarah began planning dates again. They weren't lavish, but they were thoughtful, and she was obviously trying. She began to be more present at home, taking the time to talk to me rather than disappearing into her phone or watching TV. It felt like a start in the right direction, but a part of me didn't believe it would endure. Several days later, Sarah surprised me with a handwritten note. She apologized for everything, realized how much I had been carrying in the relationship, and stated her commitment to making significant changes. I was shocked. This was the first time she had truly accepted responsibility for her acts, and it meant a lot to me. It was a step forward, but I was still unsure whether it would be sufficient. I began to sense a glimmer of hope, but I maintained my hard boundaries. I wasn't going to let myself slip into the same habits. I needed to see actual, long-lasting progress. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful that things would improve. But I wasn't going to base my happiness only on Sarah. That was how much I had learned. So, for now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I can control my own happiness. Whatever happens to her, if things go better, that's terrific. But if they don't, I will be prepared to walk away. The decision is now in my hands. I was always overshadowed by my stepmother and stepfather's favoritism toward my stepsister, despite my hard work and achievements. Since I was 15, I have had to deal with my step-parents' blatant partiality toward my stepsister. My mom remarried Robert, 45 million, who owns his own accounting firm, and that's when it all began. Linda, 42F, his wife, is a real estate agent and is always immaculately dressed in fashionable outfits with flawlessly manicured nails. Ashley, 19F, their daughter, is the same age as myself. Almost immediately after we moved in together, the first indications of preferential treatment surfaced. Although there was plenty of room in our suburban Connecticut home for everyone, it soon became obvious that Ashley was the queen. My step-parents made sure Ashley stood out in every manner, even though other parents treat their kids the same way. Everything that came after was shaped by the day of the move. I was assigned the smaller room that faced the brick wall of the neighbor's house, and Ashley was given the larger bedroom with the bay window and window seat. Shopping excursions turned into a distressing reminder of my role within the family. Ashley would shop at high-end stores for designer clothing and new Nike sneakers, while I was told to check out Target's sale shelves. Robert gave me a $50 Old Navy gift card the first time this happened, and I recall standing in the mall watching Linda and Ashley vanish into Nordstrom. He said, "Get whatever you need," and turned to follow them. I will never forget the casual dismissal and the unambiguous message about my position in the family hierarchy. The way they treated us at family time was more painful than the tangible differences. Whenever Ashley talked about her day at supper, Linda and Robert would genuinely listen and lean in to offer follow-up questions. They would hardly look up from their plates when it was my turn to contribute, making merely infrequent mm-hms or bringing up other topics. I once attempted to spread the word about my victory in the school science fair. Linda cut me off before I could finish, reminding Ashley that her costume fitting for the dance recital was coming soon. It was especially annoying when it came to extracurricular activities. Ashley participated in every activity in which she even remotely expressed interest, including private tennis instruction, dance classes, piano lessons, art workshops, and drama club. I asked to join the school's debate team, which only cost $100 to register, but Linda replied, "We need to be mindful of the budget." The following day, they enrolled Ashley in private swimming lessons that cost $200 per hour because she said she liked the water. Our communal restroom turned into yet another battlefield. Ashley's side was filled with pricey Sephora skincare and makeup, while I utilized cheap brands that I purchased with my stipend, which was a fourth of Ashley's. The towels were also different. I used the simple ones from the hall closet, but she had soft monogrammed pairs. She was so upset when I inadvertently used one of her face washes by accident that Linda had to create a lockable cabinet for Ashley's particular items. As high school went on, the gap between our intellectual abilities grew more noticeable. Ashley found it difficult to maintain a B average, whereas I kept straight A's. However, their reaction to our accomplishments was oddly biased. Ashley's favorite Italian restaurant hosted a celebration dinner after she received a B+ on a history test. After I was elected into the National Honor Society, Linda asked Ashley about her cheerleading practice without even looking at the letter. I could never do it justice, but family photos do. Ashley is the focal point of every photo, typically sporting a fresh, stylish outfit. I appear like an afterthought in my own family photographs, always in the background, wearing whatever was on sale. Since Linda had just provided him with Ashley's dimensions and preferences for the shoot, the photographer really questioned whether I was a family friend assisting with our junior year photo session. Holiday festivities turned into just another reminder of my position within the family. Ashley would always have more gifts than I had at Christmas, including high-end gadgets, designer clothing, and whatever else was in style at the time. Typically, I gave useful presents like socks, generic school supplies, or small-value gift cards. Ashley received an iPhone and a MacBook Pro for Christmas last year. I received some clothing from a bargain retailer and a $50 Target gift card. Linda was already documenting Ashley's reaction to her new laptop when I attempted to thank them nevertheless. Their treatment of our social lives was also in contrast. For their get-togethers, Linda would order pizzas and provide fancy refreshments, and Ashley was encouraged to have friends over at any time. I once requested permission to bring 2 friends over so we could study for our finals. "Just keep it down," Linda added, "and make sure they bring their own snacks." "We're saving the good stuff for Ashley's cheerleading squad party tomorrow," she continued without taking her eyes off her phone. There is so much more to tell about how things developed from here, particularly with what transpired with my mom during all of this and how I ultimately received support from an unexpected source. I have been keeping notes on my phone about everything that has happened. If you would want to hear the rest of the story, please let me know. It becomes more challenging, particularly when some family secrets are revealed and college preparations start. In our junior year, things really began to change. I applied for a job at a neighborhood coffee shop after deciding I needed some independence. Ashley reacted right away when I told them over supper. As she gave Ashley another $100 cash for her weekend shopping, Linda nodded in agreement and said, "Oh my God, you're actually going to be a waitress? That's so common." The coffee shop turned into a haven for me. I had coworkers that genuinely recognized me and appreciated my contributions for the first time. After noticing my attention to detail, my manager, Sarah, swiftly promoted me from simple cleaning tasks to drink preparation. I became an expert at managing the morning rush in 3 months. Regular clients would especially wait in my line since they knew I would accurately recall their intricate requests. "You're a natural at this," Sarah would say as she demonstrated new latte art techniques for me. At home, however, Linda and Robert persisted in their apathy, save for when they could make fun of my work. "Careful with that plate, Ashley," Robert would say every night when they were eating. "Don't want you ending up as a waitress." They chuckled as I cleared the table in silence, presumably oblivious to the irony of my doing just what they were making fun of. Academically, I also had a sea change in my junior year. My lab reports were frequently cited as examples for the class by Mrs. Rodriguez in AP Chemistry. "Notice how Audrey structured her methodology," she would add while pointing to the projector showing my work. I felt Ashley's eyes searing into my back, but I continued to concentrate on the task at hand. This is university-level precision. It felt good to get my efforts acknowledged after years of being unnoticed. Parent-teacher conferences were one very eye-opening experience. My performance was being evaluated by Mrs. Rodriguez. "Your daughter has a remarkable grasp of complex concepts. She's top of the class, and her lab work shows exceptional promise for a future in scientific research." Before I had a chance to respond, Linda asked, "Are you sure you're not favoring her? It seems like teachers always praise Audrey while ignoring Ashley's unique talents." With every academic achievement, the strain at home increased. My stepfamily seemed to respond equally and oppositely to every A+ I brought home. They would swiftly brush over my accomplishments and turn their attention to praising Ashley's most recent participation award or the C+ she worked really hard for. The night that altered everything then arrived. After finishing my calculus assignment, I was on my way to the kitchen for some water when I heard Linda and Robert conversing in their study. Normally, I would have disregarded their late-night chatter, but Robert's remarks made me take notice. He said, "Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake," in a somber voice. Linda said, "What do you mean?" "Having both of them. Ashley would have been enough. She's everything we could want in a daughter. But Audrey, she's just there. We would have been fine with just Ashley." The glass nearly fell out of my grasp. My heart wasn't as fortunate, but I managed to catch it in time. In that instant, everything became crystal clear. All of the years spent hoping for a change and striving to win their love suddenly felt so pointless. I wasn't wanted by them. They didn't. I was the extra load they wished they didn't have to bear, the undesired addition. Something changed within me after that night. I gave up trying to win their approval and gave my studies my whole attention. My thinking unclogged in unexpected ways when I wasn't under the continual pressure to win their approval. My already excellent marks took on a remarkable quality. I started getting perfect scores, but they didn't notice or care. "Excellent analysis, Audrey," Mr. Peterson said one day in AP English as he held up my work about the Great Gatsby. Ashley tensed next to me, her pencil tapping angrily on her desk. "Class, this is exactly the kind of deep thinking I'm looking for. Your comparison of Gatsby's invented identity to modern social media personas is particularly insightful." From the corner of my eye, I could see her face getting red, but I continued to look straight. In other classes, similar scenes occurred. I was invited to a prominent essay competition in AP history because of my understanding of the Cold War. My experiment design in physics was chosen for the state science fair. Regardless of the subject, Ashley became more enraged the more the teachers complimented my efforts. When Mrs. Rodriguez invited me to coach other students in chemistry, that was the tipping point. She chuckled and remarked, "Your explanations are often clearer than mine. Would you consider leading some study sessions before the AP exam?" Ashley's voice came to me from downstairs that night. "Mom, the teachers are being mean to me. They always praise Audrey and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." With her high-end handbag swinging and her heels clicking on the linoleum flooring, Linda strode into school the following day. She marched into Principal Williams' office, where they summoned in Mrs. Rodriguez, and I observed from the corridor. "I want to know why your teachers are discriminating against my daughter," Linda pleaded. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out our progress logs and placed them side by side while remaining composed and professional. "Here are both girls' records. Audrey consistently scores in the top percentile in all subjects, while Ashley—" "Are you saying my Ashley isn't intelligent?" Linda cut in, raising her voice. "Not at all. I'm merely pointing out Audrey's academic achievements." However, she was not persuaded by any amount of proof. I heard Linda explaining to Robert that day when she got home that the teachers were clearly biased against their precious Ashley. I had grown weary of begging for pocket money and seeing Ashley receive hundreds of dollars for simply being alive. My job at the coffee shop was now my passport to independence, not just a haven. I opened a second bank account that neither Linda nor Robert knew about, and I began saving every dime I could. The tips from the regular customers went directly into that account, and they frequently increased them after they found out I was saving for college. However, even this minor triumph was not without opposition. Ashley and her friends would frequently leave their empty cups on the table, purposefully spilling liquids to make my job more difficult, and then loudly comment on how sad it was to see people stuck serving coffee. The message was clear. I wasn't even permitted to excel in a job that they viewed as beneath them. My coworkers noticed and began taking their directions instead. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You're embarrassing with your tiny house and budget clothes. I've moved up in the world," Linda yelled in a heated phone conversation I had overheard years earlier. She had been speaking to her parents, my grandparents, whom I had never met because they weren't good enough for her new way of life. I sneaked into Linda's home office that evening while she and Ashley were out shopping again, this time for Ashley's pre-graduation wardrobe makeover. I located the location in the older part of town under DF4, Do Not Contact, in her address book. I felt a mixture of fear and hope when I looked at that address. These were my grandparents. They might genuinely be interested in getting to know me and consider me more than just an unwelcome member of someone else's ideal family. After my shift at the cafe tomorrow, I've made the decision to go see them. I don't know what to anticipate, but I know I have to try. The address is just a few blocks from my workplace, in a neighborhood Linda would likely deem below her. I've been missing the family link for years, but maybe, just maybe, I'll find it now. After I meet them, I'll provide an update. I feel like this could be the start of something significant. I have a feeling that meeting my grandparents could completely alter my destiny, not just my current circumstances. First update. 2 weeks have passed since my last post, and I'm amazed at how much has changed. I was standing in front of a tiny blue house with a well-kept garden after my shift at the cafe that day. Every step I took up the path to my grandparents' house felt heavier than the one before, and my heart was racing. The well-kept grass was covered in lengthy shadows from the late afternoon sun. The door opened when I held up my hand to knock, revealing my grandparents, an elderly couple. The man sported wire-rimmed glasses and a kind smile, and the woman, dressed in a flour-dusted flowered apron, had her gray hair pulled back in a tidy bun. When I said, "Hello, I'm Audrey Matthews. I think you're my grandparents," they gave me a perplexed look. Their mouths fell open at the same time. My grandma said, "Oh my God, Frank," as she put her palm to her mouth, "it's really her. You look just like your mother did at your age." After they invited me in, I found myself seated in their comfortable living room, sipping tea from fine cups as they stared at me intently. Photographs from decades of family history that I was unaware of dotted the walls. Among them, I saw photos of my mother in her teenage years, sporting the same bashful grin I had seen so many times in my own image. Numerous visits followed that initial one. I would spend hours with my grandparents, bringing them cookies and pastries from work, while pretending to be working extra shifts at the cafe. They truly cared about every aspect of my life and were excellent listeners. They questioned me in depth about what I was studying after I told them about my AP classes. They offered to help evaluate my essays when I brought up my college applications. Things at school kept getting more intense. Princeton sent me a large envelope one morning. I could hardly open it since my hands were shaking so much. Full academic scholarship. Before leaving for home, I hurried to show my grandparents, and their response was just what I had ever hoped for in a family. As Grandpa continued to remark, "I knew you had it in you, kiddo," Grandma began to cry. When I eventually told Robert and Linda about Princeton, they responded just as I had anticipated. Distractedly, Linda remarked, "That's nice, dear," before turning to face Ashley. "Honey, have you decided which state school you're applying to?" My acceptance was entirely forgotten as Ashley sniffed and announced that she was taking a gap year to find herself through travel and self-discovery. Within minutes, They were talking about possible places for Ashley's gap year. After averting a potential catastrophe during a health inspection, I was promoted to shift supervisor at work. A little celebration was thrown for me by my coworkers, who signed a card and produced a homemade cake. It meant more to me than any praise I had ever received at home when my boss, Sarah, called me aside and said, "You're going places, kid. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Everything changed once again yesterday. As usual, I went to my grandparents' house after closing the cafe. They looked at each other during our chat as if they were nervous. "Audrey," Grandpa started after clearing his throat. "We need to tell you something." I was astounded by what they disclosed next. As it happens, they are not the humiliatingly impoverished relatives Linda had always talked about. They had put their meager resources in a number of software startups after Mom severed their relationship. They decided to continue living simply in their comfortable home even if those investments had paid off handsomely. Grandpa stated, "Your mother left us because she felt we were too poor, too beneath her," using a headshake. "The irony is, we're probably wealthier than she is now. We just don't feel the need to show it off." Grandma said, "We've been waiting for the right moment to help you. And with graduation coming up, this seems perfect." Everything they told me is still being processed by me. I have more to say, but I must exercise caution in what I do next. 2 weeks remain until graduation, and Linda has been hinting about a large family celebration. For Ashley, of course. To celebrate Ashley's academic accomplishments, she has already reserved a classy restaurant and invited all of their friends. After I graduate, I'll provide another update. My grandparents claimed they had something planned, and judging by their smiles, I can tell it will be something important. I have a feeling that this day will be remembered by everyone in the family. Second update. The graduation ceremony proceeded according to plan. My step-parents hardly gave a cheer when they mentioned my name as valedictorian. However, they cheered and yelled like if Ashley had just won an Olympic medal when she crossed the stage. Then the shocking news arrived. Linda virtually bounced in her seat when she said, "Girls, we have exciting news. We're celebrating graduation in Hawaii." Over breakfast the following morning. Despite everything, my heart briefly felt better, but I should have known better. You understand, right? Someone has to watch the house, and you have your job at the cafe. "Honey," Linda said to me, her voice brimming with phony pity. "We only got 3 tickets for us and Ashley." Ashley stirred her orange juice without even trying to disguise her smirk. "Don't worry, sis," she murmured, sounding overly kind. "I'll send you lots of pictures of me living my best life on the beach." I observed them loading their pricey bags into the taxi the following morning from our front door. Ashley turned around and gave a theatrical, enthusiastic wave. "I'll make sure to send you beautiful photos from Hawaii." With trembling hands, I took out my phone and dialed my grandparents as soon as the cab vanished around the corner. When I heard Grandma's voice, the tears I had been suppressing finally came out. They went to Hawaii without me. They just left me here like I'm nothing," I cried. Grandma said, "Oh, sweetheart," in a gentle yet forceful voice. "Come over right now. We'll have our own graduation celebration." Still blotting away my tears, I pulled onto their street and drove to their house. At that moment, I spotted something out of the ordinary. A brand new Mercedes C-Class automobile shining in the summer sun parked in their driveway. Next to their small house, it appeared totally out of place. I strolled up to their front door and inquired, "Whose car is that?" Grandpa held up a set of keys, and his eyes glowed. "Yours. Happy graduation, Audrey." I was certain I had misheard him, so I stood there with my mouth open. They clarified that they had been waiting for the ideal opportunity to prepare this surprise for weeks. We celebrated with a lovely handmade graduation meal while we spent the afternoon together. A banner that read, "Congratulations, graduate," was displayed throughout the dining room, and the table was arranged with their finest china. 2 weeks passed slowly. My phone would ring every night with a new alert: Ashley posing on various beaches, dining at fancy restaurants, or relaxing by infinity pools. The captions for each picture got more and more offensive: "Living my best life as someone serves coffee." The day of their return then arrived. I was in the living room, looking out the window while feigning to read a book. I couldn't help but smile as I watched their expressions play out in slow motion as the cab arrived. Mom was the first to notice. Ashley dropped her expensive beach bag on the concrete driveway after she stopped so suddenly that she was directly struck by her. Dad almost stumbled over them both when he was fumbling with their pricey matching luggage set. Linda's harsh, high-pitched voice echoed through the front glass. "What is that?" Her immaculately manicured finger was quivering a little as she pointed at the Mercedes as though it would bite her. I enjoyed every moment of their bewilderment as I walked slowly to the front door. They all turned to stare at me as if I were a ghost when I stepped onto the porch. With his face flushed from shock and the Hawaiian sun, Dad shouted, "Whose car is that?" As Ashley often did while flaunting her fancy purse straps, I twisted the keys around my finger. "Mine," I replied. Ashley barkingly laughed, but I could detect the doubt in her voice. "Yeah, right. Like you could afford that on your waitress salary." With every word I could manage, I said, "Actually, it was a graduation gift from Grandma and Grandpa." Linda's cheeks lost color so quickly that I feared she may pass out. "What?" "You know," I replied with a smirk, "your parents. The ones you were too embarrassed to talk to because they were too poor. Those grandparents?" I feared Dad could have whiplash because he turned to Linda so quickly. "Linda, call your parents, right now." When Mom took out her phone, her hand trembled. When my grandmother responded, she didn't even make an effort to be polite. She insisted, "Where did you get the money for that car?" Grandma's quiet, mildly amused voice could be heard over the phone. "Oh, hello to you too, dear. Enjoying your expensive vacation?" There was mayhem for the following few minutes. Everything would never be the same after family secrets were revealed. Third update. I had never been happier as I was during the final weeks of summer at my grandparents' place. Grandpa's humming as he read the newspaper and the aroma of Grandma's coffee would greet me each morning. No feeling like an unwanted shadow, no fighting for attention, no walking on eggshells, just tranquility. It was bittersweet to move to Princeton. I bid my grandparents farewell with a hug and vowed to phone them every day before leaving in my Mercedes with everything I possessed. I felt as though I was crossing a line between my old and new lives on the drive to New Jersey. Just 10 minutes from university, my grandparents had gotten me a lovely small apartment. It was nothing special, but it was far nicer than any dorm room. There were large windows, hardwood floors, and even a tiny balcony where I could study. Despite my objections, they persisted on paying the rent. However, I still desired some autonomy, so I took a part-time work at a nearby coffee shop. I didn't miss the irony, still serving coffee, but this time out of choice rather than obligation. I found myself making true friends for the first time in my life, and the majority of my coworkers were fellow students. In the best way conceivable, the first week of classes was overwhelming. I was simply another freshman figuring things out, not the unwanted extra. Without any ulterior motives or comparisons to others, my students asked me to study groups, and my lecturers genuinely seemed interested in what I had to say. About a month into the semester, Grandma called one Sunday afternoon with some intriguing news. She remarked, "Your parents arrived at our door yesterday." A beat skipped in my chest. What were they seeking? As usual, Grandma remarked. Linda was all smiles and phony excuses as she inquired about our financial status and made a reference to Ashley's impending birthday. Your father continued to scan the house, perhaps in an attempt to determine our wealth. How did you explain it to them? Holding my breath, I asked. The line was joined by Grandpa's voice. We informed them that we had already made a financial decision. Everything will go to you. When we brought up the trust fund we've established for your graduate education, you ought to have seen Linda's expression. I could see their faces. What was their reaction to that? Grandma laughed and said, "Let's just say Linda's smile didn't look so genuine after that." We requested that they not return. Additionally, Ashley had the audacity to send us a list of expensive cars that she would be open to receiving as a birthday present. Is it not unbelievable? I blocked all of their phone numbers and social media accounts that night, including Ashley's. I was prepared for the unexpected expressions of love and regret, as well as offers to start over as a family. However, I no longer required their type of family. Linda tried a fresh strategy the next week. She sent a long letter after somehow obtaining my new address, likely by looking through my grandparents' mail. It was filled with justifications that they would love to be a real family once more and that they never intended to hurt me. The P.S.'s request that I speak positively to my grandparents on Ashley's birthday was the most telling. After carrying the letter to my balcony, I ripped it into small fragments and allowed the wind to whisk them away. After that, I gave my grandparents a call and helped Grandma organize her garden for the upcoming spring for an hour. Real family feels like that. No comparisons, no stipulations, just love. I occasionally think about that young child who used to ask for her parents' affection as I sat in my constitutional law class, taking notes and truly enjoying the intricacy of the subject matter. Not only would she find love, but she would also find respect, support, and the ability to be herself. I wish I could tell her that. Here, Emma, my roommate, has grown to be my best friend. I was almost adopted by her large, devoted family in Massachusetts. They offered me to spend Thanksgiving break at their family's beach cottage last weekend. I almost started crying when Emma's mother gave me a hug and remarked, "There's always room for one more at our table." My study group most likely confirms our later meeting at the library when my phone softly buzzes in my pocket. Perhaps it's Jake, the adorable guy from my psychology class who persistently requests coffee, thankfully not in my cafe. I used to work as a barista, and my family situation is complex, but he doesn't care that we've been studying together lately. Now, everything is so normal, no drama, no incessant comparisons, no sense of inadequacy. It's just me, my education, my friends, and the bright future that lies ahead. I've begun researching law schools. For once, I feel like I can dream as large as I want, and Grandpa believes I'd be a fantastic lawyer. There probably won't be any further updates from me. I've closed this chapter of my life and am prepared to start a new one, this time according to my own wishes. I've discovered that it's acceptable when the family you pick is superior to the one you were born into. I appreciate everyone who has followed my journey. You have no idea how much your support has meant. If you find yourself in a similar circumstance, keep in mind that you should not allow someone to make you feel inadequate. You will be loved for who you are by the right people.